We'll get started with this presentation today. We are going to be looking at critical thinking through effective instructional and assessment strategies. So there are three things we are going to be focusing on. The most important is critical thinking, and then we are looking at effective instruction and assessment strategies. So we are going to be looking at critical thinking in teaching and testing. So we're going to look at both these pieces together. We will start by doing a small activity. And here it is. What you need is a blank sheet of paper, and I want you all to draw a house. Just take 30-40 seconds, draw a house. I'm sure you've done it. It's not difficult, but just take a few seconds and draw a house. If you don't have a blank sheet of paper, use a line sheet, but draw the house. That's important. And it doesn't have to be accurate. It could be a sketch, but it should be a house. Okay? You all have a house in front of you? Okay, let's see. Does your house look something like this? With a triangular roof, a door, and some windows? If it looks something like this, I want you to focus and think why. Why does your house look something like this? I'm sure for most of you, whatever house you drew, it looks something like this. It may have an extension on the right, but this is what it would look like. Now think, why did you draw your house with a triangular roof? If you look out in the community, our houses don't have triangular roofs. They're flat, they're horizontal. But yet, when we draw houses, we draw them like this. Why? Anyone would like to share why the house we drew looks something like this? Basically, has a triangular roof. Why? Anyone?
जी अस्सलाम वालेकुम सर, डॉक्टर
जी
तस्नीम बात कर रहा हूँ, क्योंकि
जी
सर
जी
हमने शुरू से सीखा ही ऐसे है इसको ड्रा करना।
Exactly. Exactly.
अस्सलाम
You
वालेकुम
are
सर।
absolutely right. हमें बचपन में सिखाया गया था ड्राइंग क्लास में कि घर ऐसे हो बनते, लिहाजा ओवर टाइम, अब हमने तो सीखा बचपन में था ना, लेकिन उसको तो अब 20, 30, 40 साल हो गए, लेकिन अभी भी हम घर ऐसे ही बनाते हैं क्योंकि हमें सिखाया उस तरीके से गया था. So what does that mean? There is no creativity in the houses we make, in the houses we draw. क्रिएटिविटी नहीं है क्योंकि हमें ड्राइंग सिखाई गई थी, हमें ये नहीं कहा था कि ड्राइंग खुद बनाओ. Okay, so unfortunately it is sad, but because this is the way we were taught to make a house, this is the way we still make our house. Okay, so lack of creativity. Now we will look at one other activity. Yeah. Again, make a list of objects that show a circular shape, that are round. Okay, so let's see. Zara, take a minute or so and make a list. कितने circular shape के objects आप list कर सकते हैं? सोचें, it's not that difficult. Figure out, think, look. In your mind's eye, look at what things can be round or circular. हुए किसी के 10-15? Yes? 10-15 नहीं हुए अभी? चलें, 10-15 हो तो बताइएगा. नहीं? It's not that difficult. But let's see.
जी सर, ये लिस्ट है.
जी,
टायर,
कितने हुए?
सन,
कितने?
1 2
Just give me
3
the
4
number.
5 6 7 8 9 10.
10, okay. Anyone has more than 10? Nahin? If you had more time, how many could you come up with?
फुटबॉल
नहीं, एग्जाम्पल नहीं चाहिए,
फुटबॉल
मुझे इस वक्त नंबर्स में सिर्फ नंबर्स ढूंढ रहा हूं. और and I'll come back to football क्योंकि football is not circular. Football is a sphere, it's three-dimensional. Circular is two-dimensional. Football का cross section will be circular. Huh? Anybody got to 15? नहीं?
नहीं सर, 8 तक तो पहुंच गए हैं.
8. Okay. All right. I'll get you out of your misery. Let's see. Here they are. Clock, cake, compass, manhole, gutter ke dhakne, dartboard, screw head, camera lens, wedding band, traffic light, zero, donuts. You just go on. There are so many things that reflect a circular shape that are round. Okay? I'm sure इसके अलावा भी और बहुत से हो सकते हैं, लेकिन this is a starter. Now this, looking and trying to identify this was critical thinking. ये आपने एनालिसिस करनी थी, ऑब्जेक्ट्स देखने थे वो सर्कुलर शेप देते हैं नहीं देते हैं क्या है. दैट्स व्हाई दिस इज क्रिटिकल थिंकिंग. So you see the difference between creative thinking and critical thinking. Critical thinking में analysis आती है. And that is the key. When you do research, you are hopefully doing analysis. So our students need critical thinking. So how are we going to develop these skills in our students, the critical thinking skills? Okay? So let's move on. Developing thinking skills. Teaching is more difficult than learning because what teaching calls for is this: to let learn. अब मतलब क्या है इसका? Teaching ज्यादा मुश्किल है सीखने से. सीखना आसान है. टीचिंग मुश्किल क्यों है? क्योंकि टीचिंग का मतलब है कि सीखने दो, सीखने दिया जाए. टीचिंग का मतलब सिखाओ नहीं है. अगर हम सिखाओ करेंगे ना तो थिंकिंग स्किल्स नहीं आ सकती. सीखने दो, सीखना चाहिए खुद. on your own. You should please turn off your mics. Please turn off your mics. Okay? टीचिंग मुश्किल इसलिए है कि अगर हम टीचिंग सही तरीके से करें तो हम बच्चों को सिखाएंगे नहीं, उनको सीखने देंगे. That is the bottom line of teaching, of good teaching. अब डेप्थ ऑफ नॉलेज. हम नॉलेज देते हैं, इंफॉर्मेशन देते हैं, कंटेंट देते हैं, लेकिन हम डेप्थ में जाते हैं कि नहीं. Over here you will see this circle with 4 sections. Level 1 है recall, यानी कि याद क्या हुआ है जहन में दोबारा से ले आए. तो अगर हम कैलकुलेट, अरेंज, रिपीट, स्टेट, यूज, नेम, व्हाट, वेयर ये सब करेंगे तो ये रिकॉल है, ये लेवल 1 है. अब लेवल 2 पे जाएंगे तो हम स्किल और कॉन्सेप्ट को चेक करते हैं. अगर बच्चा ग्राफ कर रहा है, क्लासिफाई कर रहा है, कॉज इफेक्ट बता रहा है, कुछ पैटर्न्स आइडेंटिफाई कर रहा है, तो ये स्किल और कॉन्सेप्ट की एनालिसिस हो रही है. लेवल 3 पे जाएंगे तो स्ट्रेटेजिक थिंकिंग आता है. जब आप क्रिटिक करते हैं, लॉजिकल आर्ग्यूमेंट्स देते हैं, जब आप किसी फिनोमेना को एक्सप्लेन अपने लफ्ज में करते हैं, इन्वेस्टिगेशन करते हैं, हाइपोथेसाइजिंग करते हैं, तो किसी टेक्स्ट को या किसी प्रोसेस को रिवाइज करते हैं, यू आर डूइंग स्ट्रेटेजिक थिंकिंग. और लेवल 4 है एक्सटेंडेड थिंकिंग. अगर आप कुछ नई चीज डिजाइन करते हैं, कुछ सिंथेसाइज करते हैं, कोई कॉन्सेप्ट्स को अप्लाई करते हैं, क्रिटिक करते हैं, क्रिएशन करते हैं, प्रूव करते हैं किसी चीज को, तो यू आर एट लेवल 4. हमारे बच्चे फिलहाल अभी भी मेजॉरिटी क्लासरूम्स में लेवल 1 पे हैं. कुछ क्लासरूम्स में लेवल 2 पे है. लेवल 3 और 4 बहुत कम दिखाई देता है, क्योंकि लेवल 3 और 4 मींस बच्चे ने इंडिपेंडेंट काम करना है. टीचर से पूछ के और टीचर के बताने पे, टीचर के समझाने पे अगर बच्चा आगे काम करता है तो वो ना लेवल 3 है ना लेवल 4 है. दैट विल बी स्टक टू लेवल 2. सो लेवल 1 इज टीचर डिपेंडेंट. लेवल 2 जो है वो कुछ टीचर डिपेंडेंट है, लेकिन लेवल 3 और लेवल 4 आर डेफिनेटली स्टूडेंट डिपेंडेंट, इंडिपेंडेंट. तो हाउ आर वी गोइंग टू मूव आवर स्टूडेंट्स जो कि लेवल 1 पे अभी भी रिकॉल मींस रोट लर्निंग, रेक्टिफिकेशन, अगर वही करना है तो हम लेवल 1 पे ही है. लेवल 1 से 2, 3, 4 और लेवल 1 से आप 4 पे उल्टा नहीं चल सकते. आपको 2 और 3 से गुजर के ही लेवल 4 पे आना पड़ेगा. सडनली लेवल 1 से बच्चा लेवल 3 पे या लेवल 4 पे काम नहीं कर पाएगा. ओके, सो वी मस्ट गिव नॉलेज टू स्टूडेंट्स, लेकिन डेप्थ में दे. ऊपर ऊपर से बता के बस इतना ही काफी है इज नॉट गुड इनफ. फिर है कि एजुकेशन फिर क्या है. ये 2 quotes I'm giving you. Education is not about learning diverse subjects. एजुकेशन ये नहीं है कि आप फिजिक्स, केमिस्ट्री, मैथ, बायो, इंग्लिश, उर्दू, हिस्ट्री, पाक स्टडीज सब पर है. डाइवर्स सब्जेक्ट्स, मुख्तलिफ सब्जेक्ट्स पढ़ने का नहीं है, बट अबाउट लर्निंग डाइवर्स वेज टू द सेम सब्जेक्ट. एक मैथ का प्रॉब्लम है, एक इंग्लिश की स्टोरी है, एक हिस्ट्री का इवेंट है, उसको आप 3, 4, 5 तरीके से कैसे देख सकते हैं. सो इट्स डाइवर्स वेज ऑफ लुकिंग एट द सेम सब्जेक्ट. हम अनफॉर्चुनेटली पहला स्टेटमेंट फॉलो करते हैं कि डाइवर्स सब्जेक्ट्स पढ़ो, लेकिन डाइवर्स सब्जेक्ट्स के साथ डाइवर्स वेज ऑफ द सेम सब्जेक्ट भी बहुत जरूरी है. सो लुकिंग एट वन इंस्टेंस in 2, 3, 4 different ways is education. Okay, otherwise it will end up being training. Do not follow where the path may lead. Go instead where there is no path. ये रैल्फ वॉल्डो एमरसन की The Road Less Taken है. तो जाने पहचाने रास्ते पे तो सभी चलते हैं. एजुकेशन का मतलब क्या है कि कोई नई राह देखे. सारे लोग राइट टर्न करके ही जा रहे हैं भाई, एक ही तरफ जा रहे हैं. आप लेफ्ट जाके देखें, एक मुख्तलिफ नजरिया मिलेगा आपको. सीधा जाके देखें, हो सकता है कोई और नजरिया मिले. सो टेकिंग अ डिफरेंट पाथ इज व्हाट गुड एजुकेशन शुड बी. यानी एक टॉपिक को, एक कंटेंट को, एक स्किल को, एक स्टोरी को आप 3, 4 मुख्तलिफ तरीकों से, अंदाज से देख सकते हैं. दैट इज एजुकेशन. फिर what is teaching? Teaching is a process intended for learning by inducing a behavioral change in the taught. यानी अगर बच्चे में कोई behavioral change, यानी behavioral change means वो change नजर आना चाहिए. दिमाग में हाँ जी समझ लिया, मुझे नजर तो नहीं आ रहा ना आपने समझा. That's not teaching. How do I get, what do I make the students do that tells me कि हाँ बच्चे ने सीखा है. It is an art of communicating a message impact on the learners. यानी जो मैं पढ़ा रहा हूं बता रहा हूं उसका कोई इम्पैक्ट बच्चों पे हो रहा है या नहीं. इम्पैक्ट होगा जब बच्चों की जिंदगियां चेंज होंगी. अगर क्लास बाय क्लास से बच्चे मैट्रिक कर लिया, इंटर कर लिया, बैचलर्स में चले गए, हाल वही है, तो वो टीचिंग नहीं हुई है. Pedagogy is an art or profession of teaching. और टीचिंग, जब पेडागोजी अमूमन हम पूछते हैं ना पेडागोजी क्या है, तो लोगों के जहन में आता है टीचिंग मेथड. पेडागोजी टीचिंग मेथड से बहुत कुछ ज्यादा है. टीचिंग मेथड्स है, क्वेश्चनिंग है, क्लासरूम मैनेजमेंट है, फीडबैक मैकेनिज्म्स है, काइंड ऑफ एक्टिविटीज एंड असाइनमेंट्स है, काइंड ऑफ टेस्टिंग है, focus on students है, so the teacher learns while teaching. अगर आप पढ़ाते हुए नहीं सीख रहे कुछ, तो आप पढ़ा नहीं रहे. You should learn. देखिए ना, I may be teaching 20 साल से एक English to class inter first year. 20 साल से मैं पढ़ा रहा हूं. ना कंटेंट चेंज हुआ है, ना सिलेबस चेंज हुआ है, ना एग्जाम पैटर्न चेंज हुआ है, कुछ भी चेंज नहीं हुआ. मगर हर साल मेरी क्लास में बच्चे चेंज होते हैं. आई कांट टीच द सेम वे बिकॉज आई एम टीचिंग फॉर एंड टू द चिल्ड्रन. जब वही चेंज होते हैं तो हर साल आई हैव टू मेक श्योर आई टीच द चिल्ड्रन. we teach the syllabus, we teach the textbook, we teach the course. इस प्रोसेस में हम बच्चों को भूल जाते हैं. We teach children, we don't teach subjects. लिहाजा even if I teach the same thing for 5, 10, 15 years, I should change what I do, how I do, and the time required for what I do, because the student population is different every year. Types of teaching. अब टीचिंग एक्टिव हो सकती है, पैसिव हो सकती है, लर्नर सेंटर्ड हो सकती है, टीचर सेंटर्ड हो सकती है. हमारे यहाँ अनफॉर्चुनेटली अभी भी पैसिव टीचर सेंटर्ड टीचिंग चल रही है, जहां टीचर बोलता है ज्यादा. अब एक क्लास में आप देखें, एक वक्त पे एक टीचर होता है, 30, 40, 50 बच्चे होते हैं, बोल कौन रहा होता है ज्यादा? टीचर. सो द स्टूडेंट्स आर पैसिव एंड द क्लासरूम इज टीचर सेंटर. एक्टिव क्लासरूम में बच्चे बोलेंगे, they will discuss, they will talk, the teacher functions as a facilitator. जब क्लासरूम एक्टिव होगी तो ऑटोमेटिकली लर्नर सेंटर्ड होगी. So how do we move from a passive to an active classroom? How do we move from a teacher-centered classroom to a learner-centered classroom? That's where we want to go. Criteria of good teaching क्या है? Clear concept, which means thorough preparation on the part of the teacher. आपकी lesson planning कैसी हुई है? How long did it take you to make that lesson plan for this 45-minute class? देखिए, आप एक lesson plan 20 मिनट में नहीं कर सकते. मुझे with 42 years of experience and all my degrees from the US, I still take 2 hours to do a good 1-hour lesson plan. So are you clear? Do you understand कि आप कर क्या रहे हो, क्यों कर रहे हो? फिर do you organize your content? पहले ये, फिर ये, फिर ये, फिर ये, या अलाई चलाई में जो दिमाग में आया करके क्लास से निकल पड़े. एक्सेलेंट क्वालिटी एंड ऑप्टिमम क्वांटिटी। देखिए, क्वांटिटी पे हम जोर नहीं दे सकते, हमें क्वालिटी पे जोर देना है। तो आपके लेसन की क्वालिटी क्या है? क्वांटिटी हो जाएगा। अगर बच्चा 2 स्टोरीज नहीं पढ़ेगा बुक में, कुछ हो नहीं जाएगा इसको। सो फोकस ऑन क्वालिटी। सीक्वेंसिंग क्या है? जो प्री रेक्विजिट स्किल्स या कंटेंट या नॉलेज है वो पहले करना है। इज इट रेलेवेंट टू द बच्चा? देखिए ना, बच्चे को हम आज क्यों पढ़ा रहे हैं? हम इसलिए पढ़ा रहे हैं कि वो 2025 2030 में जब जॉब मार्केट में होगा, ही विल बी रेडी। आर वी गिविंग देम जॉब रेलेवेंट information, skills, knowledge today? Are our students today future ready for their future? हमारा future नहीं है, बच्चों का future है। And is it learner oriented? यानी does it focus on the child? अगर child पे focus नहीं करता तो we are in the wrong field. So these are 6 criteria of good teaching. Begins with planning, the conducting, and is it learner centered? Who does the teaching? The teacher teaches, not the whiteboard or the blackboard, not the textbook or notes, and not the PowerPoint presentation. I strongly believe that the teacher will never be replaced. You need the human element in teaching. The teacher teaches. आप देखिए, whiteboard, textbook, notes, PowerPoint are tools. लेकिन आपका प्रोसेस क्या है? आप लेसन कंडक्ट कैसे करते हैं? आपकी बॉडी लैंग्वेज क्या है? आपकी एंथुजियाज्म कितनी है पढ़ाने में? या जैसे मैं कहता हूं, हम हाय हाय करते हुए बस दिन गुजारते हैं। So the teacher teaches, you teach with tools like the whiteboard, textbook, notes, PowerPoint, or anything else. But these tools don't teach, they help you teach. अब 6 लर्निंग प्रिंसिपल्स। अगर हमारी क्लास स्टूडेंट या लर्नर सेंटर्ड होनी है तो वी हैव टू फॉलो द 6 लर्निंग प्रिंसिपल्स। फर्स्ट इज प्रिंसिपल ऑफ एक्टिव लर्निंग। एक्टिव लर्निंग मीन्स टीचर का मुंह बंद और बच्चों का मुंह यक 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 यक। द डिस्कशंस, द टीचर शुड स्टेप इन। हर कुछ 4-5 मिनट बाद गाइड करे, फैसिलिटेट करे, थोड़ा समराइज करे, कोई क्वेश्चन थ्रो करे बच्चों को। बट एक्टिव लर्निंग, सी, जब आप एक टॉपिक शुरू करते, कभी आप बच्चों से पूछते कि इस टॉपिक के बारे में आपको क्या पता है? ऑल यू डू इज 3-4 क्वेश्चंस एट द स्टार्ट। ये आपके लेसन प्लान में होने चाहिए। एंड यू आस्क, यू नो कि बच्चों को, मेजॉरिटी बच्चों को ये पता है। अगर जो पता है वो मैंने पढ़ाना है तो मेरी क्लास में तो मसले होंगे ना। लेट मी बिल्ड ऑन व्हाट द स्टूडेंट्स हैव ब्रॉट। इस लेवल तक तो ये लाए हैं ना इंफॉर्मेशन, उसके ऊपर अब मैंने जाना है। तो एक्टिव लर्निंग, where the students are actually participating, doing things that are expected of them. And silent reading is not active learning. Copying notes from the board is not active learning. Listening to the teacher is not active learning. Okay? Active learning is bachcha actively participate kar raha hai. Number 2 is principle of previous experience. अगर हम बच्चों से पूछे कि तुम्हारा एजुकेशन में एक्सपीरियंस क्या है, इट्स प्रिटी पैथेटिक। उनका एक्सपीरियंस यही है कि भाई टीचर बक बक करके चले जाते हैं, हमें टेस्ट देते हैं और टेस्ट 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 एंड दैट्स इट। सो प्रीवियस एक्सपीरियंस जब नहीं है तो आगे एक्सपीरियंस कहां से आएगा? वी हैव टू प्रोवाइड। देखिए ना, एज टीचर्स वी कैन से, भाई 10 साल से तो किसी टीचर ने कुछ किया नहीं इन बच्चों के साथ, मुझे क्या जरूरत है सर खपाने की। और यू कैन से कि भाई पिछले 10 साल से तो किसी टीचर ने कुछ नहीं किया। Now I am the teacher. मैं कुछ कर दिखाऊंगा. And then do it. Give them the correct experience. You want their learning experiences for them to remember. कि इस टीचर ने ये करवाया था, इस टीचर का ये था, इस टीचर का ये था. Principle of previous experiences. If the previous experiences, पहले जो कुछ इनके साथ हुआ है वो अगर अच्छा होगा, they will recall and learn better. Principle of relevance. जो भी कुछ पढ़ाया जा रहा है या उनसे करवाया जा रहा है, क्या उनकी जिंदगियों से रेलेवेंट है? देखिए ना, आई मे हैव सेड दिस प्रीवियसली टू, बट हम हैंड राइटिंग पे फोकस करते हैं ना. हैंड राइटिंग, द हेडिंग्स, द अंडरलाइनिंग, द ये द वो. भाई इन बच्चों ने रियल लाइफ में 2030 में ये बच्चे क्या लिख रहे होंगे? ऑनेस्टली स्पीकिंग ये कुछ भी नहीं लिख रहे होंगे. ये बटन भी नहीं दबा रहे होंगे. ये मशीन के सामने बैठ के बोलेंगे, मशीन खुद उस टेक्स्ट को प्रिंट फॉर्म में या टेक्स्ट फॉर्म में लाके इनके सामने रख देगा. तो हैंड राइटिंग कहां, क्या करना है इन्होंने हैंड राइटिंग के साथ? ठीक है, कैलकुलेटर्स यूज नहीं कर सकते. आई मीन आई नो ऑफ यूनिवर्सिटीज एंड कॉलेजेस जो बैचलर्स में भी अपने बच्चों को कहते हैं कैलकुलेटर के बगैर एग्जाम देने आओ. भाई बेवकूफ था कोई जिसने कैलकुलेटर इजाद किया, जो इतने इनोवेशंस के बाद कैलकुलेटर सब कुछ कर लेते हैं. अगर मैं सही चीजें प्रेस करूंगा तो कैलकुलेटर वही करके देगा ना मुझे. तो व्हाई डू आई हैव टू डू लॉन्ग पेपर एंड पेंसिल कैलकुलेशंस? ये बच्चे कुछ नहीं करेंगे पेपर एंड पेंसिल कैलकुलेशंस में. ये एक्सेल में जाके सारा फीड करके फॉर्मूलास टाइप करेंगे, एक्सेल 2 मिनट में फटाफट रिजल्ट्स दे देगा. तो वो तो हम कुछ सिखाते नहीं है कि भी हाउ डू यू इंप्रूव एक्सेल, हाउ डू यू वर्क इन एक्सेल. वो नहीं हम करते. लेकिन ये सब कैलकुलेट करो, हाथ से करो, ये करो, हैंड राइटिंग इंप्रूव करो. रेलेवेंट क्या है इन बच्चों के फ्यूचर में, इनकी लाइफ. देखिए ना, हम देखिए आज जो मेरे क्लास में बच्चा है, इंटर में फर्स्ट करे हैं या बैचलर्स फर्स्ट ईयर में है, तो ही इज गॉट 4, 5, 6 years with me. So 2028 में ये बच्चा क्या रेडी होगा? So am I giving him today skills that are relevant to his 2028? ये सोचना जरूरी है. फिर 4 है प्रिंसिपल ऑफ सेल्फ लर्निंग. अब हर बच्चा अलग है. कोई भी दो ह्यूमन बींग्स एक जैसे नहीं है. ठीक है ना? बच्चों के पढ़ने के तरीके, काम करने के तरीके, सीखने के तरीके आर डिफरेंट. सो लेट द स्टूडेंट सेल्फ लर्न. हम जबरदस्ती कहते हैं ये करो, ये करो, ये करो, ये करो, ऐसे करो, यूं करो. क्यों? सेल्फ लर्निंग. आई विल गिव यू द स्केलेटन ऑफ द टॉपिक. उसके ऊपर गोश्त चर्बी लगाना आपका काम है. दैट इज सेल्फ लर्निंग. प्रिंसिपल ऑफ अलाइनमेंट, यानी कि आपके लेसन प्लान में जो लर्निंग आउटकम्स हैं, जो कंटेंट है, जो एक्टिविटीज है, और अगर कोई असेसमेंट है, आर दे अलाइन्ड? देखिए, आई कैन नॉट टीच एट ब्लूम्स लेवल ऑफ कॉम्प्रिहेंशन and give an assignment at application and test at analysis. It's not fair. जब मैंने एनालिसिस तक पढ़ाया ही नहीं है उन बच्चों को, तो उस लेवल पे हाउ डू आई टेस्ट? सो द प्रिंसिपल ऑफ अलाइनमेंट, आपके आउटकम्स, आपका कंटेंट, आपकी टीचिंग मेथड्स एंड एक्टिविटीज, प्लस इफ देयर इज एनी टेस्टिंग और असेसमेंट, हैव टू बी ऑल अलाइन्ड. अगर इन चारों में मिसमैच होगी तो लर्निंग में रुकावट आएंगी. And finally, to me, the most important principle of fun. Learning should be fun. Enjoy your time in the classroom teaching. जब आप ही हाय हाय करके पढ़ाएंगे तो बच्चे भी हाय हाय करके ही सीखेंगे. जब आप खुशी से, दिल से, चाहत से पढ़ाएंगे तो बच्चे भी खुशी से, दिल से, चाहत से सीखेंगे. Have fun. Laughing and enjoying what you do is not a sin in the classroom. So these are 6 learning principles that will help you guarantee that your classroom is learner-centered and active. Because that's the bottom line. I can walk into a classroom, stand there for 2 minutes, and I know, okay, are the bachas bored or not? Once, I had gone to observe the class of a teacher, and I was supposed to be there for the entire 45 minutes. I left after 20. और बाद में I called the teacher and I said, you know, if you really want to know कि मैं 45 मिनट क्यों नहीं रुका, मैंने कहा I was bored to death by what you were talking and talking and talking and talking. I actually felt sorry for the bachas in your class. भाई कहीं रुको, कोई सांस लो, बच्चे को इन्वॉल्व करो, कोई सवाल करो, बच्चे से पूछो तो सही कि 5 मिनट मैंने इतना बोला है, क्या समझ आया आपको? And the teacher was shocked. मैंने कहा तो फिर और कैसे पढ़ाते हैं? You see, when you don't go through any training, देखिए कंटेंट वाइज मुझे कोई मसला नहीं है हमारे टीचर्स के साथ. आप फिजिक्स पढ़ाएं, केमिस्ट्री, उर्दू, इंग्लिश, मैथ, जो भी पढ़ाएं, कंटेंट आपको सब पता है. How do you teach content is what you don't know. And that's where our problem comes. And that's why sessions like this should be helpful to you. It's better late than never. Okay, so 6 learning principles. Please इस पे जोर लगाएं, focus करें. जब आप lesson plan करते तो देखें, have you covered these principles? Lesson के बाद become a reflective practitioner. घर जाके शाम को 5-10 मिनट लगाएं, मेरी क्लास आज कैसे गई, ये सब हुआ, सही हुआ, कैसे हुआ, क्यों हुआ. Even if it went well, answer के क्यों it went well. My planning was good, my timing was good, I had all the materials, जो भी. If it didn't go well, बास वक्त मेरे साथ भी होता है. Some activity takes longer, and I realized how this activity took 5 minutes more. And then you analyze it took 5 minutes more because some students were not clear. Maybe I should have reviewed something, made things clear for the students, and then presented the activity. Ya jo bhi kuch hai. अब 10 teaching strategies पे देखिए वो थे principles of teaching. अब teaching strategies should happen every class you are in. Number 1 is be clear about what and why you want your students to learn. आज जो भी आपने पढ़ाना है वो क्यों पढ़ाना है और इससे बच्चे सीखेंगे क्या. You have to be clear. देखिए ना, when I've asked teachers, why are you teaching this today? Sir, syllabus में है, sir, textbook में है, sir, chorus में है. That's why you teach, because something is in a course. What is the student going to do? फिर मैं अगर पूछूं ना कि चले आपने ये पढ़ाया क्योंकि कोरस में है, अब बच्चा क्या करके दिखाएगा आपको? बच्चा क्या करेगा? आपने पढ़ा लिया ना, तो आपका काम तो हो गया, लेकिन बच्चे ने लर्निंग की है कि नहीं? व्हाट विल यू डू? सर पढ़ाया है तो सीखा ही होगा. सीरियसली? नो. You need concrete evidence. You need proof that the bacha has learned. And test scores are no proof that the bacha has learned. Unfortunately, this is not a testing session, so I'm not going to get into that. 2 hai, tell your students what they need to know and show them what they need to be able to do. You see, एक तो बच्चों को बताएं कि आप इस क्लास में ये सीखेंगे. This is what you need to know. ये कॉन्सेप्ट है, ये टॉपिक है, ये स्किल है, ये इंफॉर्मेशन है, ये स्टोर जो भी है. And show them what they need to be able to do. अब ये मैंने पढ़ा लिया ना, अब आप क्या करेंगे? कोई पजल सॉल्व करेंगे, क्वेश्चन का जवाब देंगे, कोई डिस्कशन करेंगे, कोई ग्राफिक रिप्रेजेंटेशन करेंगे, कोई कंपेयर एंड कॉन्ट्रास्ट, आप करेंगे क्या? That's when students do concrete activities, you get proof कि हाँ आपकी teaching सही हुई है. 3. Use questions to check that your students understand things. And this is not at the end of the class. This is not at the end of the lecture, and this is not at the end of the term. Questions, हाँ 5 मिनट आपने कुछ समझाया, सवाल करें, पूछे बच्चों से, फिर 5 मिनट कुछ आगे चलें, फिर बच्चों से पूछे. Make sure periodically, every so often, check randomly कि आपके बच्चों को समझ आ रहा है या नहीं. 4. Have students summarize new information in a graphical way, in a different way. बास वक्त, when I finish a topic, I tell students, okay, what have you learned? अब टॉपिक नहीं समराइज करनी, मैंने पूछा है what have you learned? आपने इस टॉपिक के बारे में सीखा क्या है? अमूमन, before I start a topic, I will ask students before, okay, please list what you already know about this. So let's say I'm doing the animal cell in biology. ठीक है, तो मैंने एनिमल सेल पढ़ाने से पहले बच्चों से लिस्ट करवाया कि उनको एनिमल सेल के बारे में ऑलरेडी क्या पता है. जो भी इन्होंने 3, 4, 5 चीजें लिस्ट कर दी कि मुझे ये पता है, ये पता है, ये पता. Okay. Then I teach. Now it may take a day, 2 days, 3 days, कुछ activities होती है and all that. When I finish the animal cell, I ask the students, now tell me, what have you learned about the animal cell? And then I say, now compare. ये आपको मालूम था शुरू में, ये आपने सीखा है. जो कॉमन है ना दोनों में, उसको काट दें, क्योंकि वो तो आपको मालूम था ना, वो आपने सीखा नहीं. So, अगर 4 चीजें मालूम थी और आपने 7 चीजें लिस्ट की हैं जिसमें से 2 आपको निकालनी पड़ी कि कॉमन थी, so you've learned 5 new things about the animal cell. So let the child decide, let the child tell you कि हाँ मैंने वाकई कुछ सीखा है. 5. Give your students plenty of practice spaced out over time. प्रैक्टिस करवाएं बार बार, लेकिन रिपीटेडली, आगे पीछे नहीं, ओवर टाइम. यू सी, समटाइम्स आई गो बैक एंड आई स्टॉप. ऐसे 2 हफ्ते पहले किसको याद है हमने ये किया था, चलिए जरा ये 2 क्वेश्चंस तो आंसर करें इस पे. जस्ट क्विक रिकॉल के पिछला भूला तो नहीं है ना, स्पेशली व्हेन समथिंग इज अ प्रीरेक्विजिट फॉर न्यू अपकमिंग नॉलेज. So these are 5 teaching strategies. There are 5 more. Provide your students with feedback so that they can refine their efforts. अब हमारे यहाँ feedback कैसे दी जाती है? 5 out of 10. Big 5 out of 10, मैं क्या करूँ? मुझे नहीं समझ, मुझे नहीं पता चला कि 5 मेरे नंबर कटे क्यों. मुझे ये भी नहीं पता चला कि आगे मैं क्या करूं कि मुझे 6, 7, 8, 9 नंबर मिले. You see, so simply giving a number or a letter grade is not feedback. Feedback is individually students को कहे, अगर आप ये करते, ये ना करते, ये ऐड करते, ये निकाल देते. So there are always comments. Constructive feedback will help students refine their efforts to do better. Allow time for every student to succeed. हर बच्चे में काबिलियत है. स्लो हो सकता है बच्चा, वो नाकाबिल नहीं है. Some people are just quick and fast, some need more time, and that's okay. We should give more time to students who need more time. Get students working together in productive ways. हम groups में अमूमन, I don't know if you've heard of the think, pair, share. मैं क्या करता हूँ, individually I put a question or a statement and I ask students to write what comes to their mind about the question or the statement or situation or topic or whatever. Individually 3-4 मिनट में देता हूँ. उसके बाद मैं कहता हूँ आपके साथ जो बच्चा है ना, उसके साथ मिलके चेक करें, यानी 2 pair. थिंक मैंने पहले अकेले किया, अपनी लिस्ट बनाई, फिर मैंने पेयर बनाया। अब पेयर में आप कंपेयर करते, जो आपके पास मिसिंग है वो आप ऐड कर सकते हैं, जो उसके पास मिसिंग है वो आपसे ऐड कर सकता है, कोई नई बात दोनों के जहन में आती है वो आप ऐड कर सकते हो। तो पेयर में अगेन 3-4 मिनट्स, फिर आई से 2 पेयर्स एंड 2 पेयर्स, आप 2 से 4 हो गए, डू द सेम थिंग। फिर 4 से 4 8 हो गए, फिर 8 से 8 16 हो गए, 16 से 16 32, माई होल क्लास इज कवर्ड। सो जो शुरू हुई थी एक्टिविटी सिंगल स्टूडेंट से becomes a whole class activity with everyone learning from everyone's contribution. So get students working in productive ways. Teach students strategies as well as content. कंटेंट सिर्फ हम पढ़ाएंगे और स्ट्रैटेजी स्किल्स नहीं पढ़ाएंगे तो कुछ नहीं होगा। Skills are equally important. Actually, skills are more important today in the 21st century. And nurture metacognition. Metacognition क्या है? Is thinking about thinking. देखिए, cognition is thinking. Meta is about thinking. So thinking about thinking. So even in math, जब कोई बच्चा आता है, मैं कहता हूँ, yeah, the answer, ठीक है, ये आंसर आया कैसे? तो the response I get is, sir, answer तो सही है। मैंने कहा, young man, I haven't said your answer is wrong. I'm only telling you to tell me how you got the answer. That's metacognition. Thinking about thinking. ठीक है, अब मुझे correct answer में interest नहीं है। Interest मेरा क्या है? The process. बच्चे ने क्या thinking की है to get to that correct answer. So metacognition is critical. Always ask students why and how. ये क्यों कह रहे हो? इस metacognition, क्यों मैंने ये कहा? How did you get this? Metacognition. Okay, so these are 10 teaching strategies that will be very, very helpful if we want students developing critical thinking skills. Up teacher ways. These are ways of teaching. Some, yeah, bhi hai. Let's see. Movies, films, videos. आजकल बहुत कुछ है, क्लास में टाइम नहीं है, चलें जी, स्मार्टफोन्स हैं बच्चों के पास। Tell them, go to National Geographic, ये डॉक्यूमेंट्री देखें, हिस्ट्री चैनल पे जाएं, ये देखें, इंग्लिश मूवी ये देखें, जो भी related to whatever you are doing. There is so much available today on the net. YouTube पे बहुत कुछ है, खान अकेडमी पे बहुत कुछ आपको मिल जाएगा। Movies, films, simulations है बहुत कुछ। That's number 2, simulations. देखिए ना, I can't bring the real thing in the classroom, लेकिन I can simulate the real thing. और बहुत सी simulations आपको YouTube पे, खान अकेडमी पे भी मिल जाएंगी। Oral presentations where students are presenting. Let the student teach a topic. Timelines, these are very good teaching ways to use in history, to use even in language. When I teach tenses, past, present, future, continuous and all that, perfect, everything, timelines. Use timelines to teach those. You know, find different ways. हर रोज एक ही boring, repeat the lecture, बोल, no, find fun ways. Peer teaching is let a student teach another student. ये जैसे मैंने अभी think pair share में कहा, 2 students को साथ करो, फिर 2 को 2 4 मिला दो. And normally हर दफा I don't go to the whole class. Sometimes I end at 4 and I say good. Or sometimes I end even at the pair. It depends कि topic क्या है, कितना time है मेरे पास, and all that. Working models. अब हम जब साइंस फेयर या कुछ इस तरह करते हैं ना, तो मुझे चार्ट पेपर्स नहीं चाहिए और मुझे बुत वाले मॉडल्स भी नहीं चाहिए। अगर आप कोई डैम बना रहे हैं, आई वांट टू सी अ वर्किंग डैम। अगर आप सर्कुलेशन कर रहे हैं, आई वांट टू सी अ सर्कुलेशन। मुझे वर्किंग मॉडल्स चाहिए। Okay, ये 2-dimensional charts and these dumb 3-dimensional models that just sit on a table are no good. होते हैं ना मॉडल्स कि ये करो, ऐसे करो, यूं करो तो the fluid goes this way and that way. मुझे वर्किंग मॉडल्स चाहिए. Puzzles are a great way to teach critical thinking. Find them. नेट पे बहुत है, पेपर एंड पेंसिल भी है, ऑनलाइन भी है, और एक्टिविटी बेस्ड पजल्स भी है. Find them and use them. Dramas, plays, skits, these are like movies, films. These are like, no, I'm sorry, they're not. Drama, play, skits is आपने एक स्टोरी पढ़ी है, एक पोयम पढ़ी है, बच्चों से कहें 5 मिनट की एक स्किट इस पे करके दिखाएं. कोई 15 मिनट का ड्रामा कर दे. Use that. You see, students don't have to write it now. When they have read a story, they've understood it, अब इसको dramatize करना है. Critical thinking. Debates करवाएं. Critical thinking. Get a topic. 2 groups बनाएं. Make sure everyone is participating. Problem solving. Give a problem to them. And again, as I say, मुझे 3 solutions चाहिए. एक solution नहीं चाहिए मुझे. Problem solving again is critical thinking. There are more. Games. Again, there are lots of wonderful games available. पेपर एंड पेंसिल गेम्स है, एक्टिविटी गेम्स भी है, हर तरह के गेम्स आपको मिल जाएंगे टू वर्क विद स्टूडेंट्स. प्लीज टर्न ऑफ योर माइक. प्लीज टर्न ऑफ योर माइक. ओके. 12 वॉल डिस्प्लेस. अब वॉल डिस्प्लेस का मतलब मुझे ये चार्ट पेपर की चेपियां नहीं चाहिए दीवार पे. मुझे वो डिस्प्लेस भी मुझे 3 dimensional इंटरैक्टिव चाहिए. ये हो सकता है आज. Be creative, be critical, find the ways. And our students are so good at developing that if you give them the opportunity. 13 is cartoons. Please turn off your mic. Cartoons बहुत सारे educational topics पे there are cartoons. Use them. It's a wonderful way to change the pace or the momentum of the class. Sketches और paintings भी बहुत हैं. हमारी अपनी है जो हम यूज नहीं करते. बच्चों से बुकलेट्स बनवाएं. Small booklets. एक टॉपिक पे जो भी आपका न्यूटन्स फर्स्ट लॉ ऑफ मोशन, ओके, मेक अ 8-page बुकलेट ऑन इट. आपने टाइप्स ऑफ केमिकल रिएक्शंस पढ़े हैं, 4 टाइप्स के होते हैं ना, मेक अ 8-page बुकलेट ऑन दैट. वेब पेजेस डिजाइन करवाएं टॉपिक के ऊपर बच्चों से. दे आर सो गुड एट इट. यू डोंट हैव टू डू ऑल द डिजिटल वर्क योरसेल्फ. आवर स्टूडेंट्स आर सो मच बेटर एट इट. Tell them. Give them the directions, the conditions, the criteria, and they will do it. Social media, जिससे हम भागते हैं. देखिए, मोबाइल फोन तो क्लास में आएगा ना, आपका भी आता है, right? So use social media. I use mobile phones. इसी तरह मैं PowerPoint में MCQs करता हूँ after the end of a topic or something, statement and then A, B, C, D. बच्चे मोबाइल फोन्स पे ABCD टाइप करके उठाते हैं. एक नजर में मारता हूं, हाँ जी B, ज्यादातर B है, which is the right answer, सही है, let's move on. अगर ज्यादातर B नहीं है और B right answer, stop, talk about it, then move on. So use all this wonderful stuff. MS Office, which is Microsoft Word, PowerPoint, and Excel, at least. Okay, including Excel is very important. E-newsletter या magazine बनवाएं. आजकल you have lots of tools and apps that will do this for you. Smartphones, I just told you how I use smartphones. For MCQs, I use it for true and false. I use it for single word fill in the blanks also. और single word अगर लंबा है तो वो फिर ये horizontal mode में चेंज करके शो करते हैं. छोटे वर्ड्स हो तो वर्टिकल मोड में काम चल जाता है. Okay, so again, good ways to inculcate critical thinking. So classrooms as think tanks. Think tanks तो सुना होगा ना? Are our classrooms think tanks? Can they be? Yes, they can. लेकिन हमें content delivery से we will have to move to content discovery. So far we've been doing content delivery. हम बताते हैं, कहते हैं, बताते हैं, कहते हैं, यही करते आ रहे हैं. उससे think tanks नहीं बनेंगे. जब बच्चा content discover करेगा, and there are ways of doing discovery learning. That's what this is called. So content discovery जब तक नहीं होगी, think tanks यानी दिमाग इस्तेमाल करने वाले बच्चे classrooms में नहीं होंगे. And see, thinking in a classroom continues for as long as the teacher wants. I say, okay, some more ideas, some more no, more time you think. जैसे जो एक्टिविटी हमने सर्कुलर ऑब्जेक्ट्स की थी, अगर मैं आपको आधा पौना घंटा देता, आई एम श्योर यू वुड हैव कम अप विद 20-25 आइटम्स. थिंकिंग रिक्वायर्स टाइम बिकॉज यू आर लर्निंग टू थिंक. जब आप थिंक हर दफा करते, हर वक्त ही करते, तो थिंकिंग बिकम्स नॉर्मल लाइक ब्रीदिंग. So let's hope we can change our classrooms into think tanks. So this is future fit skill domains. जैसे मैंने कहा ना, what our students are doing today in our classroom. From our teaching, are they future ready for their future? So can they solve? Can they relate? Can they create? Can they reflect? Can they get going? Can they investigate? Can they adapt? Can they serve? Can they get real? These are life skills and job skills that young people will need in their future jobs. Are we preparing them for that today? Solve is critical thinking. Get going is to take initiative. You'll have to do some critical thinking. Get real world effectiveness, critical thinking. If you need to adapt, you will have to do so critical thinking is covered. It's a great skill for young people to have. लेकिन जो हमारा मेजर प्रॉब्लम है ना इसके साथ, जब आप खुद ये पहले सोचें कि क्या आप क्रिटिकल थिंकिंग कर सकते हैं. अगर आप क्रिटिकल थिंकिंग नहीं कर सकते तो आप क्रिटिकल थिंकिंग किसी और को सिखा नहीं सकते. जब आपके पास एक स्किल नहीं है तो वो स्किल आप कैसे सिखाएंगे किसी और. तो फर्स्ट डेवलप क्रिटिकल थिंकिंग योरसेल्फ, इट्स नॉट डिफिकल्ट, एंड देन टीच क्रिटिकल थिंकिंग टू द बच्चास. So this is what will make our students future ready for their futures. Remember, what constitutes an enriched environment for our students? क्या है जो हमारे बच्चों के लिए एक ऐसा environment create करता है जहां वो उनका सीखने को मन करे? An environment which is stimulating and challenging, जहां बच्चों के दिमाग actively काम कर रहे हैं. You see why we need to have an active classroom? And no matter how well planned, how interesting, stimulating, colorful, and relevant the lesson, if the teacher does all the interacting with the material, the teachers, not the student's brain will grow. Interaction बच्चों ने करना है. टीचर के साथ, आपस में बच्चों के साथ, कंटेंट के साथ, टेक्स्ट बुक के साथ, मटेरियल के साथ, स्किल के साथ. Then good enriched environments will be there in our classrooms. The trivial pursuit model of education, and unfortunately ये हम ज्यादा करते हैं आजकल भी. Overwhelming emphasis on factual knowledge. बस ये याद कर लो तो काम हो जाएगा. भाई याद करना is not learning. याद करना to me is an absolute waste of time. Test focus on facts and procedures. अगर मैंने वही rote learning पे ही करना है ना टेस्ट, तो there's nothing great in it. Textbook contain little language of thinking. टेक्स्ट की हमारे टेक्स्ट बुक्स की लैंग्वेज देखें, सोचने की कहाँ हमारे टेक्स्ट बुक में है स्टॉप थिंक व्हाट डू यू थिंक व्हाट अबाउट दिस I mean why not start every chapter in the textbook with a question that forces students to think कि ये chapter में मैंने क्या सीखना है. And unfortunately emphasis is on coverage. सिलेबस खत्म करना है, टेक्स्ट बुक खत्म करना है, बोर्ड एग्जाम है, हम कंटेंट और कंटेंट अनफॉर्चुनेटली हमारे पीपल who've written the curriculum previously and even now, please understand you curriculum writers that हमारे पास 1 साल 12 महीने नहीं हैं पढ़ाने के लिए. इंटर में क्या है? At the most we have 6 months. At the most. तो साल का कंटेंट जो आपने टेक्स्ट बुक में ठोसा है वो 6 माह में कैसे कवर होगा? So think about it. We have to stop disadvantaging our own students by what we think is right in education. We cannot teach everything. So this is the trivial pursuit model of education. कि बस आम तौर पे सरसरी जो भी है ना वो कर लो तो बाद में जॉब पे आप सीख जाओगे. जॉब पे आजकल किसी ने आपको कुछ नहीं सिखाना. They will throw you out and there'll be 20, 50 other people waiting to take your position. Brain compatible instruction is what we want today. Focuses on student understanding content and confirming that उसने understand किया है. Has the student understood the content? Has he gained the ability to do something new? Requires learners to actively construct meaning. यानी मैंने सब कुछ नहीं बताना. कभी आपने इंग्लिश या उर्दू की, हालांकि लिटरेचर है, पोएम है या कोई स्टोरी है या नॉवेल है, टीचर ने क्यों बताना है ना सब? कभी भी इंग्लिश और उर्दू टीचर्स ने बच्चों से पूछा है कि ये स्टोरी पढ़िए, व्हाट डू यू थिंक, व्हाट डिड यू लाइक, व्हाट वाज द ऑथर ट्राइंग टू से? एंड दैट इज the key. That is when actively students are constructing meaning. देखे ना, वो ऑथर ने ये कहानी इसलिए नहीं लिखी थी कि 50 लोग एक ही नजरिए से ये कहानी देखें. इसलिए लिखी थी कि ये कहानी 50 लोग 50 मुख्तलिफ नजरियों से देखें. Focuses on authentic tasks that call for problem solving, critical thinking and creativity. ये नहीं टेक्स्ट बुक आंसर क्वेश्चंस, ये सॉल्व द एक्सरसाइज, कंप्लीट द वर्कशीट. Authentic tasks, not tasks to fill time. Requires teachers to limit the breadth of content addressed. You know, I mean, there's so much you can do. In the given time that you have, you can't teach everything. So we have to stop focusing on कि ये अभी बाकी है, ये बाकी है, 2 माह रह गए, ये बाकी है, ये बाकी है. And number 5 takes place in a non-threatening environment, enabling students to think rationally and creatively. जब बच्चा सोचता है ना तो हम ये नहीं कहते ये क्या कहा आपने. भाई बच्चे की, आपने कहा बच्चे को सोचो, उसने अपनी सोच से बताया. Now talk him into it. कि ये आपने क्यों कहा, ऐसा क्यों कह रहे हो, अगर ये हो तो, अगर थोड़ा सा हम मॉडिफाई इसको कर लें. लीड द स्टूडेंट टू द करेक्ट पाथ इंस्टेड ऑफ टेलिंग हिम व्हाट रबिश इट इज. इफ दैट्स व्हाट यू टेल हिम, वो बच्चे ने सोचना छोड़ देना है. नहीं सोचे. हमें ब्रेन कंपैटिबल इंस्ट्रक्शन चाहिए क्लासरूम्स में, वेयर द स्टूडेंट्स ब्रेन इज फंक्शनिंग मोर देन द टीचर्स ब्रेन. Why ask questions? Questions क्यों पूछने चाहिए? Thinking is not driven by answers. Thinking is driven by questions. So there are again different types of questions. Questions of purpose है. हम ये क्यों कर रहे हैं? Questions of information है. इससे हम क्या सीखेंगे? इससे मेरी जिंदगी पे क्या फर्क पड़ना है? क्वेश्चंस ऑफ इंटरप्रिटेशन, इसका मतलब क्या है, आपके नजदीक क्या है, उसके नजदीक क्या है, उसके नजदीक क्या है। क्वेश्चंस ऑफ असम्पशन, हम इसमें हम अज्यूम क्या कर रहे हैं। A lot of things are not based on facts, they're based on assumptions. So what are the assumptions? Questions of implication, this will be हम किस रुख पे जा रहे हैं। अगर हम यूं जाएंगे तो क्या होगा, इधर जाएंगे तो क्या होगा, पीछे की तरफ जाएंगे तो क्या होगा। So do we ask questions of purpose, information, interpretation, assumption, implication, and there's more. Questions of points of view. See, when you say what is your point of view, देखो हम जब पूछते हैं ना सवाल में in your opinion, in your opinion में अगर मुझे 30 बच्चों ने एक ही जवाब दिया है, everyone gets a 0. That's not your opinion. That's not your point of view. आपको मैंने आपसे पूछा है. Questions of relevance. This helps students discriminate what is needed, what is not needed. इस जवाब में, इस सवाल के जवाब में मैं क्या लिखूं, ये लिखूं या ना लिखूं. Is it relevant? Is it not relevant? Accuracy, questions of accuracy is how correct, especially जब figures या numbers या quotes या definitions आती हैं, are they accurate? Precise is, are the details given specific to this situation? See, a lot of times when students, I read students' answers, मुझे अमूमन ये इनसे पूछना पड़ता है कि भाई ये देखो, मैंने जो इस टॉपिक के बारे में पूछा है ना, मुझे वो चाहिए। आपने जो लिखा है वो आपको इस टॉपिक के बारे में जो कुछ मालूम था वो लिखा है। So I actually did a test on a topic where I had 3 questions only, and then at the end, at the bottom, I put a note and said, if you want to add anything about the topic that you know, that the 3 questions did not require, list them now. So I checked कि मेरे 3 सवाल मैंने जो पूछा है उसका जवाब मुझे मिला कि नहीं, और फिर मैंने देखा कि आगे एडिशनल क्या, एक्स्ट्रा वर्क फॉर मी, बट आई शुड बी देयर फॉर द स्टूडेंट. Questions of consistency, contradictions आते हैं, discrepancies आती हैं. So are we consistent in our approach? And then of course logic, questions of logic. So हमें questions सिर्फ इसलिए नहीं पूछना कि बच्चे को याद है कि नहीं, हमने इन सब बातों के लिए बच्चे से questions पूछने हैं कि ये सब बच्चा कर सकता है कि नहीं. That is what makes a good assessment. वरना तो assessments तो सभी कर लेते हैं, फायदा क्या है? Purpose of assessments क्या है? Teaching without learning is just talking. जब आप पढ़ा रहे हैं और बच्चा सीख कुछ नहीं रहा तो आप बातचीत कर रहे हैं और कुछ भी नहीं हो रहा. And the bottom sentence, the last sentence here, to ensure high quality learning, it is not enough to test students when the syllabus has arrived at the finish line. Term khatam ho raha hai, exam aa rahe hain, test aa raha hai, to questions have to be ongoing. That is quality of learning. So purpose of assessment is not to see how much the student has learned or memorized, but to see how much the student can use that he has learned and analyzed. So, characteristics of assessments. Again, assessments should be learner-centered, teacher-directed. Assessment का मतलब ये नहीं है कि मैं आधी क्लास को फेल करूं. Assessment का मतलब है कि मेरी teaching कैसे गई है. That's why it should focus on the learner and be directed by the teacher. मैं MCQs करूं, short questions करूं, मैं 5 MCQs दूं, 10 MCQs दूं, true and false दूं, that's teacher directed. Mutually beneficial, which means the student should know उसने सीखा कितना, and the teacher should know how did my teaching go. And 100% for every child doesn't mean your teaching went well. It could probably mean your teaching was pathetic. It was so poor that everybody got it. Formative, which means assessments should help students learn from their mistakes. Context specific. अब context means ये grade level क्या है, बच्चों की developmental level क्या है, subject क्या है, topic क्या है, कितना time क्या है. It should all be context specific. Ongoing. Throughout the class. मैंने कहा ना lecture 5 मिनट दे, 2 सवाल करें, फिर 5 मिनट दे, 2 सवाल करें. Ongoing, firmly rooted in good practice. ये जो अभी 10-11 question types बताए थे ना, that's firmly rooted in good practice. उस type के questions क्या आप करते हो? उस type के questions क्या आपकी assessments और evaluations में शामिल हैं या नहीं हैं? A checklist for effective questioning. जब आप question करें ना, whether you're designing a quiz or test or an activity or end of chapter या end of unit या जो भी, decide, do I make certain that all students develop a deep understanding of key declarative facts, concepts, generalizations, and principles, and procedural knowledge by emphasizing higher order questions. ये Bloom's taxonomy की level पे क्या मेरे questions higher order हैं या नहीं? In other words, are they at application, analysis, synthesis, evaluation level? My test, quiz, exam, worksheet, anything should be at least 80% higher order and only 20% or less lower order. 2 is, do I encourage discussion in my classroom by using open-ended questions? Open-ended questions means questions that do not have one right answer. All questions like, in your opinion, what do you think, what recommendations do you make? These are open-ended questions. Have a discussion. Do I decide on goals or purposes of my questions? ये सवाल मैं क्यों पूछ रहा हूँ? इससे मुझे क्या पता चलेगा? देखिए ना, इसीलिए lower order questions are no good because it doesn't help you learn or decide कि मेरा purpose क्या है. Higher order में purpose आती है. Do I avoid questions that contain the answer? बाज़ वक्त ना question में ही जवाब मिल जाता है, especially lower order questions में. उस type के questions को avoid कीजिए. Do I choose important rather than trivial material to emphasize students' in-depth exploration of essential key questions? देखिए, आप टेक्स्ट बुक आपने कवर की, हर टॉपिक उतनी इंपॉर्टेंट नहीं है, हर चैप्टर उतना इंपॉर्टेंट नहीं. क्या आप ज्यादा वेटेज उन इंपॉर्टेंट चैप्टर्स को दे रहे हैं, इंपॉर्टेंट टॉपिक्स को दे रहे हैं वर्सेस द ट्रिवियल टॉपिक्स एंड द नॉट सो इंपॉर्टेंट चैप्टर्स? देयर इज मोर. Do I use probe questions? Probe is finding out. What do you think? How would you approach this? Why are you suggesting this? Those are probe questions. Do I ensure that students clearly understand my questions and avoid a guessing game? In other words, जो language में use करता हूँ मेरे questions को लिखने में, will the student understand कि मुझे exactly चाहिए क्या इस सवाल में? And lot of times when I check students' responses, ना मैं ऊपर से लकीर मार के नीचे में कहता हूँ, these 7 lines were not needed in this question. See, somehow our students think ना more is better. ज़्यादा लिखेंगे ज़्यादा नंबर आएंगे. Not with me. Actually, when I cross off these, I actually cut points because you're wasting my time. जो मैं quiz 2 minutes में check कर सकता हूँ, because I have to read all this extra stuff, it takes me 4 minutes. So you're wasting my time. It will cost you. Nonsense नहीं चाहिए मुझे. Do I anticipate students' responses to my questions yet allow for divergent thinking? मैं सोचूं कि ये मेरा सवाल है, ये बच्चे लिख सकते हैं, लेकिन अब एक बच्चा उस 5 चीजों से हटके कुछ लिख रहा है. Wonderful. See, I have given students 12 out of 10 because of great stuff they've written for me. If they can do work better than me, they deserve credit for it. और हमारे बच्चे कर सकते हैं अगर हम उनसे करवाएंगे, वो नहीं करते बिकॉज दे नो आसानी से मेरा ए ग्रेड आ रहा है, तो मैं पागल हूं जो मेहनत करूं. Do I use purposeful strategies for helping students deal with incorrect responses? जैसे मैंने शुरू में कहीं कहा था 5 out of 10 से बच्चे ने क्या सीखा? कुछ में मुझे नहीं पता ना कि ये इनकरेक्ट क्यों है, क्यों मेरे 5 नंबर कहां गए. So purposeful strategies, comments, notes, suggestions, counseling. Do I make effective use of wait time 1 and wait time 2? Normally class mein when I throw a question, I want silence. I don't want hands going up. I don't want students opening their mouth. 5, 6, 10 second ki silence. It's wait time. Then I will ask. Wait time is think time. Sawal pucha hai, socho pehle thoda. Then I'll ask 3, 4 questions. Students, if the answer is right, theek hai. If the answer is not, I will stop again. I'll repeat the question and I'll do wait time 2. Phir main 5, 10 second dunga, socho. Then, and that's how we go on. Do I avoid yes or no questions? अगर yes or no questions पूछ भी रहे हैं तो आगे add कीजिए why. Did you like this story? Yes. उससे मुझे कुछ नहीं पता चला. Why? आप वजह बताएं ना. No. उससे मुझे कुछ नहीं पता चला. वजह बताएं क्यों नहीं पसंद है. Give me the reasons. Okay? So this is a checklist. When you do questions, check कि ये 10-12 checklist criteria है good effective questioning के, do you meet them. देखिए शुरू में 5, 6, 10 दफा आप checklist यूज करेंगे, उसके बाद it becomes habit. Normally you'll just do it because you know that's the right thing to do, to check the checklist. Types of questions, closed or open, हमने बात की है. Closed questions are no good. They have one correct answer. Open-end questions are questions that have multiple correct responses. Or higher order questions tend to be open and encourage divergent thinking. देखिए closed-ended questions are convergent. वो एक ही आंसर पे आके सारे मिलते हैं. Even if you've got 50 students, they all give the same answer. That's closed convergent. एक point पे, एक ही answer पे. Higher order open-ended questions are divergent. They will give 5, 6, 10, 20, 30, depending on how much freedom you allow students in thinking about what they are answering. Question types for critical thinking. Application questions. Again, as I said, higher order. अब आपने पढ़ाया, बच्चों ने understand भी किया, समझ में भी आ गया. Now you want them to apply. Apply what they know. So, not going to go through all of these. How could you apply these grammar and usage principles to your essay? अब हमने कुछ ग्रामर पढ़ा है, हमने कुछ मे बी कंपैरेटिव एडजेक्टिव्स किया है या समथिंग. हाउ विल यू अप्लाई, यूज इट इन योर राइटिंग टुडे. एप्लीकेशन टाइप्स ऑफ क्वेश्चंस. बाकी सैंपल्स ये आपको पावर पॉइंट मिल जाएंगी. You can look at it. I'm not going to go over all. I'd rather go over all the types of questions. Next, analytical questions. This is analysis level at Bloom's taxonomy. And these questions ask students to dissect key information. इनको जो ना बाल की खाल उतार के चेक करें कि क्या है, तब analysis होगी. How are these characteristics alike and different? हम कहते हैं ना compare and contrast, elements and compound. भाई वो T table बना दिया, लिख दिया. That's rote learning. How is this and this similar? How is this and this different? What analogy could you use to represent this situation? And an analogy is when you try and relate dissimilar things. दो चीजें जो काफी मुख्तलिफ हैं, उसमें आप कॉमन एलिमेंट्स लाके उनको मिलाने की कोशिश करते हैं. You see analysis and how critical thinking comes in? Synthesis questions is writing, is creating, is doing your own stuff. So what would you hypothesize about this? कभी आप students से कहें ना, even bachelor level पे I have taught, MPhil level पे even I've taught, and I've asked students, what is the hypothesis of your research? And the poor dears, they just look at me. Sir, ये क्या होता है? I mean, how did you get to MPhil level? If you don't understand, you need a hypothesis. An ek, do, teen. And one student actually brought me for one, I remember, 15 hypotheses. मैंने कहा, आप क्या करना चाह रहे हैं इस project, इस research में? How can you check 15 hypotheses in one research? And you know the response I got? Sir, 15 paper बन जाएंगे, fit है मुंह. Why are we focused on quantity? किस क्वालिटी के वो पेपर्स होंगे, उसमें क्या मिलेगा किसी को? I mean, seriously? At MPhil level, you're still thinking of quantity? Not good. Interpretive questions. I want your interpretation, your meaning, your understanding of whatever we've read or whatever we see. It's very, very important to get the students to be thinking on their own, to see their own understanding of something. And when you do interpretive questions, you never tell a student wrong. You never tell a student what rubbish is this. You lead. It may be rubbish, and I'm not saying it isn't. At times it is rubbish, but then you question, you lead the students into the correct form of thinking. You never, because if you say rubbish, wrong, the student will stop thinking. Wahin par. And that's not what we want. Evaluative questions are critique questions, passing judgment. Again, did you like this? Did you appreciate this? Did you enjoy it? What worked? What did not work? Evaluation questions also require critical thinking. And simply yes, no are no. And even reasons, मुझे 10 useless reasons नहीं चाहिए. I cross them off. I say this is rubbish, this is no good, this is no good, this is no good, no. Ye teen. Just these three would have given you full points. You see, you have to get the students out of thinking कि ज़्यादा लिखेंगे तो नंबर ज़्यादा आएंगे. नहीं ऐसा होता. नहीं ऐसे होता. नहीं होना चाहिए. Now, critical thinking questions, this is like a checklist for critical thinking. Emphasize why and how questions. Critical thinking, wahan aayegi. Use hypothetical thinking. What would happen if? And then give something. What if this had happened? You know, सोचने दे. वैसे हमारी इतनी load shedding और ये वो होती है. What if it suddenly snowed in Lahore? Think. Employee reversals. What happens if we reverse the steps? अगर ये process हम उल्टा करें तो क्या होगा? Depending on the process or the sequence of whatever you're trying to sequence. Apply different symbol systems. How can we represent these ideas in graphic form? अब graphic form में जब मुझे चाहिए ना, especially when I'm doing quantitative kind of work, I leave it to the students. आप bar graph बनाएंगे, line graph बनाएंगे, histogram बनाएंगे, pictograph बनाएंगे. आप bar graph अगर बना रहे, horizontal बनाएंगे, vertical बनाएंगे. I leave that all to you. मैं हर चीज dictate नहीं कर सकता बच्चों को. Use analogies. How is this like? And as I said earlier, analogy is when you try दो मुख्तलिफ चीजों को आप मिलाने की कोशिश करें. Analyze points of view. How else? What else might account for this? How would Hamlet view these events? You've read Hamlet, Shakespeare. How would Hamlet look at the way the events went? Employ completion activities. Before we read the conclusion, make a prediction. What do you think? How do you think? What will happen next in the story? And I do this even in science. I do this in history when we are reading stuff. I say, okay, what do you think will follow? Let the students see the sequence and see the use of the timeline in studying these kinds of things. So these are some examples or samples of critical thinking questions. Obviously, I hope you realize that when you do this kind of questioning, you cannot check a quiz, test, or exam with an answer key. You have to read every word the students have written. You cannot have an answer key. You cannot have कि यही answer होगा. Not possible. Did you get it? Okay. Zara, let's see. Identify the following questions as application, analytical, synthesis, interpretive, or evaluative. ये 5 हमने अभी देखे हैं ना. So let's see. Just एक कागज पे आप लिखते जाएं 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 और आगे सिर्फ ये application question है, analytical है, synthesis है, interpretive या evaluative. Number 1. If you could be an animal for a day, which one would you like to be? Oh, sorry, and why? And why? Okay, so ये किस type का question है? Why do you think the results of the chemistry experiment for the two groups is different? दो groups ने कोई chemistry experiment किया, उनके results मुख्तलिफ है. क्यों है? Use number 3. Use the following facts from the 5 experiments on Newton's laws of motion and make some generalizations. आपने 5-6 facts compile किए और वो इनको दिए और उनको कहा कोई generalization करें. 4. If you used 2 different methods to solve the same applied trigonometry word problem, what would you expect and why? Problem एक ही है, trigonometry का है, 2 मुख्तलिफ मेथड से आप कर रहे हैं, क्या आप एक्सपेक्ट करते हैं और क्यों? 5 is which of the following 2 summaries is better? Why? 2 summaries आपने किसी story या poem की पेश की है, बच्चे पढ़ेंगे और आपको बताएंगे कौन सी summary बेहतर है और क्यों. 6. What would you say about the placement of the eyes on the following animals? Lion, zebra, deer, cheetah, hare, tiger. ये 6 जानवर हैं, उनकी आंखों की प्लेसमेंट के बारे में आप क्या कह सकते हैं? And finally 7. Explain how you solved the puzzle. कोई puzzle दिया था, इसको आपने solve तो किया, लेकिन अब आप ये explain करें कि solve कैसे किया. Okay, these 7 should fall in one of the 5 question categories. Let's check. The first one was synthesis. You were creating. Second was analytical. You had to do some analysis. 3 was application. You were applying the facts to generalizations. 4 was application. You were applying different methods to solve the problem. 5 was evaluative. You were giving a judgment, a critique. 6 was interpretive. You were interpreting the placement of the eyes. And 7 was application. Again, you were explaining how you solved the puzzle. I hope most of you got this right, or at least 5 of these right. But again, this is a starting point. The more practice you give yourself, the better you will tend to be with this. And so, critical thinking it is. All this is involved in critical thinking. It's a lot. What we've tried to do today is really look at why critical thinking is important today in 21st century education. Why it is important कि critical thinking पहले आप में तो skill हो ताकि आप ये skill सिखा सकें. We've looked at some instructional approaches, strategies, methods for teaching critical thinking to students, and we've looked at some questioning and assessments that will help students focus on critical thinking in giving their responses. This brings us, yes, to the end of this. What we've done is really just focused on critical thinking and what it does, what it can do for our students, what it can do for you, how in your teaching you can introduce and use critical thinking, and how in your assessments you can check whether the students are doing critical thinking. It's a great skill. Thank you very much. If there are questions or anything, I will take a few and see what we can do.
Okay, participants, tamaam kindly जो participants भी सवाल पूछना चाहता है अपना hand raise करे. I will pass the microphone access to the person. Kindly अपने hand raise करें तो one time में एक ही जो participant है वो बात करे. अपने पास बुला लें.
G. I'm sure you have questions, guys.
Participants, आपके mic enabled है please.
GG.
अस्सलाम वालेकुम.
जी वालेकुम.
डॉक्टर साहब वेरी इम्प्रेसिव सेशन. आज का जो था क्रिटिकल थिंकिंग का, प्रॉब्लम सॉल्विंग और जो इमर्जिंग ट्रेंड्स आजकल न्यू असेसमेंट में आ रहे हैं, माशाल्लाह बहुत अच्छा सेशन रहा और हम टीचर्स को इसकी बहुत ज़रूरत है. सर माई जस्ट ए कमेंट कि हमारा जो एग्जामिनेशन सिस्टम है फर्स्ट ईयर और सेकंड ईयर में बोर्ड के जो एग्ज़ाम हो रहे हैं वो उनका जो पैटर्न है वो नॉलेज बेस्ड है और मैक्सिमम चले जाएंगे वो अंडरस्टैंडिंग बेस पे होंगे. तो हमने चूंकि स्टूडेंट्स को तैयार करवाना है एनुअल एग्जामिनेशन के लिए, तो हम जो एनालिटिकल रीजनिंग, प्रॉब्लम सॉल्विंग, सिंथेसाइज, एनालिसिस, एवेल्यूएशन के जो कंसेप्ट बच्चों को देंगे तो वो किस तरह एग्जामिनेशन की तैयारी में उनको हेल्प करेंगे, क्योंकि हमारा एग्जामिनेशन सिस्टम में सिर्फ वो रट्टे का टेस्ट होता है.
जी. Okay, let me respond to this. I think that's a good question. I've also taught intermediate, लेकिन I've done good things with them also. ये है कि देखिए मैं भी जब आजकल पढ़ाता हूँ ना, I don't do all this every day. लेकिन मेरी कोशिश होती है कि हर क्लास में कम से कम हफ्ते में एक दफ़ा तो कोई अच्छा डिफरेंट काम मैं करूँ. I know we are a result oriented society. स्टूडेंट्स को रिजल्ट चाहिए, पेरेंट्स को चाहिए, टीचर्स को चाहिए, प्रिंसिपल को चाहिए, इदारे को चाहिए. एंड सो आई एम नॉट सेइंग नो, बट वंस अ वीक तो आप कुछ डिफरेंट सा कर सकते हैं ना बच्चों के साथ. एंड देखिए ये जो एग्जाम रोट लर्निंग बेस्ड है उसकी तैयारी पे रटवाना ही है. दैट डजंट टेक ऑल दैट मच टाइम. सो हफ्ते में एक दफा भी एक क्लास में आप कुछ डिफरेंट करेंगे तो आई डोंट थिंक यू विल बी एट अ लॉस, बट आई थिंक इट विल बेनिफिट द बच्चा. सो आई थिंक यू शुड स्टिल गो अहेड एंड डू.
डॉक्टर सफिया सईद.
अस्सलाम वालेकुम सर.
जी वालेकुम सलाम.
सर मेरा ये क्वेश्चन है, मैं क्योंकि ये प्रैक्टिकल फेस कर रही हूँ, मेरी अपनी बेटी है, वो सर रोट लर्निंग की तरफ आना उसको जरा हो रहा है, वो उसके कॉन्सेप्ट्स क्लियर होते हैं और मैं ये फेस प्रैक्टिकल कर रही हूँ ना कि वो उसके कॉन्सेप्ट जब क्लियर करके वो सारा वो पढ़ती है, उसके बाद उसके कॉन्सेप्ट्स क्लियर होते हैं और उसको ना वो रोड की तरफ जा नहीं रही. लेकिन मैं जो स्कूल में फेस कर रही हूँ कि उसके ना वो 80-85% से ऊपर जाती ही नहीं है और जो बच्चियां रट के लेके जाती हैं वो जो है 90-95% में चली जाती हैं अब ये सर मैं प्रैक्टिकल कर रही हूँ कि जब वो अब उसको मैं कहती हूँ कि आप जो बुक है बुकिश वही बिल्कुल एज इट इज याद करें, तो वो कहती है मामा मैं नहीं कर सकती। अब इसका क्या हल हो सकता है सर, इसको हम कैसे कूप अप करें?
I think this is a common element. Even my daughter had that, and we did not force her. We said, if you can't memorize, you can't memorize. देखिए, getting a score, and I do understand that we are result oriented. My daughter also suffered, but she is now a very successful psychiatrist working in Canada, and so let them do what is comfortable for them. देखिए हमारा unfortunately एक system है, जितना हम कर सकते हैं उतना करना चाहिए, and 80-85 is not a bad score. I understand कि 1100 में से 1100 जब आते हैं, which is beyond my understanding. I don't know of any student at that level who can get 1100 out of 1100. I am just appalled कि कितने बच्चों को इस साल टोटल में से टोटल मार्क्स मिले हैं, which is I think very 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 surprising for me. But आप अपनी बेटी को हेल्प करें, आप अपनी बेटी को एनकरेज करें कि जितना कर सकती है वो करे. देखिए 85 से 87 तक आ जाएगी, 88 तक आ जाएगी. She'll make her life. My daughter did it. Your daughter will do it too. See, I can't change the system, unfortunately.
Okay, पीरज़ादा मोहम्मद शाह साहब, मोहम्मद शफीक रहमान जी, पीरज़ादा मोहम्मद शफीक रहमान
जी। डॉक्टर साहब इस हवाले से मेरी कोई एक दो गुजारिशात हैं। शफीकुर रहमान अर्ज कर रहा हूँ जी, प्रिंसिपल गवर्नमेंट कॉलेज चिश्तियाँ। हम लोग जितनी ट्रेनिंग इस वक्त तक ले चुके हैं, के तौर पर ये है कि अपनी सतह पे हमें काम करना चाहिए। सिस्टम की खराबियां जो हैं वो उनकी निशानदेही भी ज़रूरी है, मगर उस पर हम कर कुछ नहीं सकते, हमारे इख्तियार में कुछ नहीं है। मेरी एक चीज़ और राय ये थी कि हम सिस्टम की बुराइयों को इस तरह से बयान ना करें, क्योंकि पहले ही हमारा एतमाद हमारे इदारों पर उठ चुका है। अगर इस तरह से हम लोग बरसरे आम इस तरह से सारी चीज़ें डिस्कस करेंगे तो मेरा ख्याल है इसका कोई नेगेटिव इम्पैक्ट ही जाएगा। पॉजिटिव इसलिए नहीं जाएगा कि हमारे इख्तियार में कुछ नहीं है, और नेगेटिव इसलिए जाएगा कि हम कुछ करने के काबिल हैं नहीं, और जो हमारे बस में है उसमें हम फोकस उस हद तक नहीं कर पा रहे जितना कि हमें करना चाहिए। तो हमें अपनी हद तक कोशिश करनी चाहिए, और इदारों के बड़े जो हैं जितने भी DPI कॉलेजेस हैं, सेक्टी HED हैं, HEC के जो बड़े लोग हैं जो इस हवाले से सारी चीज़ें कर रहे हैं लुक आफ्टर, तो उनको करना चाहिए और बेहतरी के लिए तजावीज़ भिजवा देनी चाहिए। शुक्रिया सर।
I completely agree with you. I think yes, as teachers we should do whatever is within our control and our limits. But talking about issues, I don't think is a bad thing, because if nobody talks, the issue will never be highlighted and will never be worked upon to improve it. I think PHEC through these trainings is doing great work. I have no issues with the education department or any one individual or individuals over there. I think we need to look at what we can do and then hope that over time things can improve, can become better. लेकिन हम जो कर सकते हैं ना as teachers with our students, हमने बच्चों की जिंदगियां चेंज करनी है, and that is what teaching should help us do, and that's our job as teachers. System, yes, you can't change, I can't change, but we can hope the system improves, and over time in many ways it has, in some ways it hasn't, and maybe that will happen over time. Okay, G, anybody else?
खालिद इकबाल साहब सर, खालिद इकबाल साहब आप पूछिए प्लीज। जी समा बशीर कैनी साहब आप पूछें प्लीज।
अस्सलाम वालेकुम सर, मिसेस समा बशीर फ्रॉम गवर्नमेंट कॉलेज मुल्तान। सर मेरा ये
जी।
क्वेश्चन है कि जो क्रिटिकल थिंकिंग है ये लॉन्ग टर्म लर्निंग में स्टूडेंट की हेल्पफुल कर सकती है?
इट्स अ लाइफ लॉन्ग लर्निंग स्किल, क्योंकि देखिए हमने एनालिसिस अपने घरेलू मसलों में भी करते हैं, दोस्तों के साथ भी करते हैं, जरूरी नहीं कि एजुकेशन और क्लासरूम्स में ही ये सारा अप्लाई हो। तो यस, इन द लॉन्ग रन इट विल बेनिफिट देम फॉर लाइफ, नॉट जस्ट इन एजुकेशन बट इवन इन लिविंग।
थैंक यू सर। यानी कि डे टू डे लर्निंग के साथ साथ ये लॉन्ग टर्म लर्निंग में भी हेल्पफुल कर रही है।
एब्सोल्युटली, एब्सोल्युटली, बिल्कुल
ठीक,
बिल्कुल।
थैंक यू सर, थैंक
जी, खालिद इकबाल
Welcome.
साहब, सर लास्ट क्वेश्चन
जी।
खालिद इकबाल साहब।
जी अस्सलाम वालेकुम सर।
वालेकुम सलाम।
Sir, I would like to know your ideas about divergent thinking. And actually, I want to know that does it come after critical thinking, or can we correlate them, or do they have any relationship
Yeah.
among
Okay.
with one another?
Divergent
Yes.
and critical thinking can be correlated because when you are looking at something critically, you're looking at 2, 3, 4 different options. You're doing some analysis. That's what you do even in divergent thinking. And then you choose, okay, of these 2 or 3, this is better. So I think, yes, they overlap slightly. However, every incident of convergent thinking will not involve critical thinking, but every critical thinking will involve divergent thinking. Because if you don't think differently, you will not
PhD
be
from
able to.
Austria in education with a special focus on mobile learning, and there are a number of research publications on her credit. And for the past 4 years, Dr. Mehwish is associated with Punjab Higher Education Commission as a resource person, and has conducted a number of sessions with the faculty, the leadership of both public and public sector colleges as well as public and private sector universities. Before I request Vardi ma'am to take over and start interacting with you participants, you all are requested to kindly follow the protocols. Do mute your microphones during the sessions, and in case you have to ask a question, you can unmute with the permission of the resource person. Over to you, ma'am. Hello.
Thank you so much for such a generous introduction. So as you have been told, my name is Mehwish Raza, and today I'm going to talk about the selection and designing of instructional strategies for effective learning. Now, first thing that I want to talk about before we go into the content that I have listed here in today's presentation, there is really no hard and fast principle, neither is there any formula that I can give out to choose and design instructional strategies that ensure effective learning. It is highly contextualized. It really depends what content are you teaching, which subject are you teaching, which degree program are you teaching, what is the terminal professional competencies that you want to instill in amongst your students. All of this matters. However, today's presentation and this conversation that I would have with you all in the next 90 minutes will include concepts of effective learning. We will try to figure out what does effective learning mean, as this is a highly contextualized term, so its meaning is subjective in different situations. So we'll just figure out in our own context that what is effective learning, how can we choose instructional strategies to ensure effective learning amongst the students, what are some of the characteristics of instructional strategies that are likely to result in effective learning. And lastly, I'm going to open the floor for a conversation. And as the representative from the Punjab Higher Education Commission has explained, that you should hold on to your comments and just post your comment or ask your question during this final segment of our training program. So let's figure out and let's understand, let's explore what is effective learning. Each one of us come from a different context. When I say different context, I mean to say that we teach different subjects, we teach different students, their context is very different. And always remember that instructional strategies, their impact and the results that they bring about really depend on the kind of students that you're teaching. उनकी कितनी लर्निंग कैपेसिटी है, उनके क्या लर्निंग स्टाइल्स हैं, क्या लर्निंग प्रेफरेंसेस हैं, आपके सब्जेक्ट के लिए क्या चीज़ है जो कि आपको मैंडेटोरली उनको कौन से एक्सपीरियंसेस देने हैं. फॉर एग्जांपल, डू यू वांट टू गिव देम एन एक्सपीरियंस ऑफ हैंड्स ऑन लर्निंग, और डू यू वांट टू गिव देम एन एक्सपीरियंस ऑफ just you can say theoretical aspects of learning. So here I have a little activity for all of you. I'm going to send this link to you in meeting chat. Please click on this link. The link is already there in the meeting chat. Click on this link and report your answers. All you have to do is to tell me what are some characteristics of effective learning as you understand the term. And there is no right and wrong. Whatever you understand by the term effective learning, please express yourselves. You will see 3 answer bars. Once you click on the link that I have shared with you, you will see 3 answer bars. In all of those answer bars, you can write your comment. I am going to present this and show you how do I see your responses here. So, the title says characteristics of effective teaching, and naturally effective learning is a result of effective teaching. So just tell me, what are some characteristics of effective teaching? What do you understand? Take about 3 minutes to report your response. Please do not report a response here in the meeting chat. Log on to this portal of Mentimeter and post your comment. In your opinion, active teaching promotes engagement. It motivates students. It should be activity-based. It should be student-oriented. It should progress from easy to difficult. Very good. Actually, you all understand it perfectly in the right sense that effective teaching is a multi-dimensional phenomena. It's not, again, I would say it's not anything straightforward that we say that, okay, if your teaching has A, B, C elements, then it is definitely it will reap effective learning. Sometimes the teaching is absolutely, flawless. It entails all the essential elements that good teaching should have, but the result is not how we expect. So this is there is no hard and fast formula that anyone can tell you about effective teaching or effective learning, or to achieve effective learning. But yes, you're very correct in saying that there are some visible aspects that we can inculcate in our teaching styles, in our teaching approach, in order to make sure that our students maximize the learning outcomes. So I'm going to wait for another 5 minutes for the rest of you to post a comment. This is going to help you in understanding your thoughts in a better way. What do you understand? How do you understand the term effective teaching? So far 13 of you have responded to the question, but there are about 88 people in this call, and I'd really appreciate if more of you can part. अगर आप अपने responses को अब देखें, almost 17 people have responded to the question. Some things really stand out, and some of these answers are yet again very subjective. For example, critical thinking, motivation, flexibility, behavioral changes. Now, these are all extremely subjective. आपके लिए critical thinking क्या है? किस चीज़ को आप flexible कह रहे हैं? कौन से aspect को आप flexible करेंगे तो आपको लगता है कि effective teaching आप कर सकेंगे? क्या आप टाइम के एलिमेंट को फ्लेक्सिबल करेंगे? आप स्टूडेंट ऑटोनॉमी को फ्लेक्सिबल करेंगे? चॉइस ऑफ कंटेंट को फ्लेक्सिबल करेंगे? चॉइस ऑफ रिसोर्सेज को फ्लेक्सिबल करेंगे? So there are, all of these things are yet again multi-dimensional. So thank you so much for participating in this activity. I am going to stop sharing my screen and will take you back to the present. Chat में there are a few responses. Abdus Salim साहब कह रहे हैं कि transformation of knowledge, exactly what you want with the learning goals. And then it takes us back to a very important aspect of planning. How are you planning your learning goals? This is again a big question, and the sense of effective teaching or the outcome of effective teaching then depends on the planning of your lectures, the learning outcomes that you have planned, the activities that you have planned, resources that you have planned to go with those activities, and lastly, the assessment objectives. So let's see, after we have talked about the characteristics of effective teaching that are likely to reap effective learning among students, and we also have figured out that it is not anything straightforward, simple. It has multiple aspects to it. The teaching is there are certain characteristics within the teaching that should be inculcated in order to maximize the learning outcomes. Now, what is effective learning? There are 6 aspects of effective learning that I'm going to talk about. The first is interest and attention. Some of you reported this in the previous activity. Innate interest and attention, or intrinsic interest and attention, is absolutely essential for the students to be able to maximize the learning. It should promote, your teaching should promote a sense of imagination. It should create students inquisitive about their about the content. It should make them curious. It should make them curious enough to think about it, to engage in research, maybe self-driven research or instructor-driven research. It should also encourage the sense of motivation. Motivation का क्या मतलब है? Motivation is this will to do something on your own. Maybe you don't know how to do it, but just to find out a way to accomplish the objectives. That is motivation. When you push yourself, when you have this desire in you to achieve something, that something may be something new for you, something that you haven't done before, but just to muster up this courage that I can do. It's a commitment. It's basically a commitment to perform, not to compromise on anything, on your engagement. It's an ongoing process. It's a process of involvement in something which is not then withdrawn. Satisfaction is another aspect of effective learning when you find relevance with the academic achievement. Sometimes students are not satisfied after receiving a lecture or after taking a teaching intervention. There is this sense of dissatisfaction in them because they can't make a connection between the academic achievement and the content that the teacher has taught and the assessment objectives. So when there is no connection between any of the 2 elements of teaching, it is likely to raise dissatisfaction amongst the students. There has to be a positive connection between experiences and expectations. If today you were expecting that you will learn something about effective teaching strategies, and I start to teach you about, let's say, how to teach dramatics in the colleges, so you'll be very disappointed, right? Because you have been shown something else and you received something else. So this is also human nature. You need to align your learning objectives, assessment objectives, activities, the experiences that you have planned for the students, and the way you assess them over their skills, that everything has to complement one another. When you complement all of the learning experiences, and you provide enough opportunities to students to be motivated, to be eager, to have this interest in your course, you're actually promoting the sense of confidence in them. And when somebody is confident, they, even if they make mistakes, they use those mistakes to learn their lessons. They use the assessment for learning. It is not just a mean to find out how well are they doing or how much have they scored, but it is basically a demonstration of how confident they are in this subject matter. They should be able to demonstrate learning. They should be able to ask questions and provide their individual opinion about matters. इतना हौसला, इतना confidence students के अंदर आपने instill करना है through your teaching styles, that their voice is heard. This feeling of being heard is also very important. Finally, by doing all of this, you ensure critical thinking among students. They think about problem solving, they think about reasoning, that even if they don't agree with you on certain argument or on a certain learning experience, it's a good thing for them to engage in reflection, to argue with reason, to argue with logic. And finally, your teaching should promote a sense of self-regulation. Your teaching should promote this sense of responsibility among students, that they feel responsible for their own learning. They should feel responsible to set goals for their self-development, for their academic development. They should be able to monitor their progress and to self-reinforce learning concepts. Of course, you're providing them the learning experiences, but yet again, you're giving them an opportunity to become a partner in learning. So all of this, all of these 6 characteristics, if you promote these through your teaching, you are likely to achieve effective learning. You are likely to maximize the learning outcomes among students, and you're likely to achieve better learning outcomes for your course. Now, to do all of this, to achieve, to demonstrate effective teaching, to practice the effective teaching, what sort of competencies should you have? That's another very important question. Before we talk about the strategies, all of this, these are the prerequisites. Aapka kya role hai? Aapne kaise apna role perform karna hai? And when you understand your role, you will be able to adapt to the situation. You'll be able to adapt to the context of your students, and you'll be able to find the meaning of effective teaching in your own context. So that's what I'm trying to help you in doing. I'm trying to help you understand the expectations and to understand your role as instructors. Again, I'm taking it back to what Amjad Saab had stated in the meeting chat earlier, that planning is the key. That's the foundation of your teaching. You have to align the learning outcomes with the teaching strategies and the learning activities, and finally the assessment. When you do this, you will be able to motivate students, you'll be able to satisfy their expectations, and you will also be able to give them certain amount of confidence that they are preparing themselves well for the given context of your curriculum. Now, effective planning की कुछ principles हैं. सबसे पहला तो principle ये है that you should always keep the outcome in your mind. Always have the outcome in your mind. Whatever you're teaching, what do you expect from the students to gain out of that learning outcome? How will you assess the students on the particular learning outcome? So these are some key points that you must ask yourself. Also, your planning should reflect the students' learning styles. It should reflect their learning abilities, their learning, the kind of challenge that they can take. It should be well aligned to the needs of the students. You should practice critical thinking. When you practice critical thinking in your thought, in pursuing your goals, in reflecting your practices, and in engaging in the process of metacognition to think about what you're thinking. So all the time we are busy doing one thing or other, and we hardly spend any time on reflection, because there's so much workload, there's so much content that needs to be covered, there are so many resources that needs to be aligned or created. So we don't really, this is a neglected aspect. हम समझते हैं कि हम शायद सोच रहे हैं, मगर हम उस सोच को systematically नहीं सोचते. We don't maintain any reflection logs, we don't maintain any evaluation logs, we don't think about the learning activities that we are engaging students in. We don't think about the learning resources, their impact, how well have we used the learning resources, how could we improvise on the usage of the learning resources. All of that, it has to be in a systematic manner. Then you must offer some kind of autonomy. In order to offer some kind of autonomy to the students, you must perform autonomously yourself. You should have the independence of thought, you should have the independence of action, you should have the independence of choice. You must have the control over the curricular content. आपको पता होना चाहिए कि आपके पास कितना time है, which contents require more time of yours, which ones will be covered up in a short span of time. आप actively engaged हो in the process of teaching and learning. जब आप खुद actively engaged होंगे, and then when you will be leading with practice and demonstration, your students will automatically pick it up. Work on your affective domain. Work on the interaction that you have with the students, the way you include students in the process of teaching and learning, and articulate high standards. Expectation bar को बहुत ऊंचा set करें, so that students try to achieve your they try to rise up to your expectations. When they try to rise up to the expectations, they will in a way uplift their learning and achieve the learning outcomes in a much better way. Now I have another activity for you. After we have talked about the effective teaching styles, and we've talked about the characteristics of effective teaching, I'm sharing another link in the meeting chat with you. Now this time around, it will take you to Answer Garden. There on Answer Garden, please look for question number 2351353. The link is also there in the meeting chat. It's a direct access link. All you have to do is to click on this link, and it will take you to this question where I have made a portal for you to post the different strategies that you use in your context to make sure that your students are learning effectively. Which strategies do you use? Please remember that there is no one answer to this. There is no right and wrong to this. We all are correct in our own context, and I'm just trying to bring everybody on the same page. So which instructional strategies do you usually use to make sure that your students are learning effectively? It really depends on the subject that you're teaching. And at this point, I will stop to share my screen with you. That this response stands out because it has been posted twice. As you move the cursor over different responses, it will tell you that how many number of times this response has been posted. So let me now, this was just a generic feature of this online application. I wanted to share it with you. Now let's look at the responses that we have. You make sure that your students are learning effectively by asking questions. Involvement of students in the lecture. Of course, you involve students in the lecture through questioning. So most of you have basically, you have reported that you ask questions from students. Okay. Anyone else who thinks differently or does anything differently? You interact with the students, you plan questions, you ask questions from them. What else do you do to make sure that your involving the students. Posted that they submit assignments, and yes, the nature of assignments could be different. Sometimes you give a collaborative assignment to the students. You ask them to involve in presentation making or giving the presentation, or a research oriented assignments. You integrate technology in your lessons in such a way that you give students different learning experiences. You give them experimental learning experiences, independent learning experiences. Students should remain active one way or other. Now, activity can be explained in different ways. Activity can be when they are engaged in something, they are performing some hands-on tasks, or activity can be something where their mind is working, they are engaged in evaluation, reflection, argument, critical thinking. That is also an activity. And it also, engages students productively. So thank you so much. I'm just going to refresh the screen one last time, and then we'll close this activity. So brainstorming, asking questions, submitting assignments, asking relevant questions. So the more focus that your cohort has is on questioning as a technique to engage students and to make sure that your instructional strategies that you all use. Let's talk about the different types of instructional strategies that people use or instructors use in order to make sure that their students are actively involved in the teaching and they maximize the learning outcomes. The first category is student-centered teaching strategies or instructional strategies. I'm sure you all know about it. I'm sure that you all know that these are the activities where students are more in command. They know how to address their issues. They know what is the learning outcome. How are they going to steer their learning experiences to achieve those learning outcomes which you have planned for them. So इसका मतलब ये है कि आपका role एक mentor की तरह है. You are just planning the learning outcomes for them. You're aligning the learning experiences. You're arranging the learning resources, and you know this, that how will you assess students on their learning outcomes. जो trajectory है आपने learning pathway students के लिए draw कर दिया, you have dotted it down. ये आपका role है, but then you're just leaving the students to accomplish those on their own. You're there to help them, to mentor them, to guide them, to provide them feedback. But basically, the students are the ones who take the charge, and they are the ones who steer their learning on their own. This is a lot of autonomy, but it does not mean that your role is negligible. No, your role is still very much fundamental here, because you're the one who's deciding the learning outcome, the resources, how many, when to use those resources, at what point do you want to induce the learning experiences, what do you want to do first, what will you do later, how will you consolidate the learning. So all of this arrangement, this is basically a stage that you set up for the students. आपने वो stage सारा set up कर देना है, and then you're just there watching them navigate through the learning experiences. And such type of instructional strategies and the overall method of teaching is student-centered teaching. Whereas there is another style, which is kind of, you can say, the conventional teaching style, where the teacher is in command. You set up all of the instructional activities for them. You're the one who leads through the learning experiences. आप हैं जो पहले lead करते हैं, यानी कि through your conversation, maybe through the textbook, through the content. Even if you want students to engage in some experiment or something that is hands-on, you're the one who first performs, first tells, and then you lead by demonstration. You tell them that this is the assessment task. You assign the the assessments, you decide the rubrics, you decide the expectation level for the students, and who needs reinforcements and when do they need reinforcement, and also the reinforcement content. So यहाँ पे students passive receivers हैं. आपकी तमाम तर कोशिश के उनका काम सिर्फ ये है कि वो आपके साथ साथ रहें, and they should follow you, they should understand you, but you're the one who's basically running the show. So this is teacher centered. Now इनकी characteristics क्या हैं? अब ये आपने decide करना है. इन दोनों instructional strategies में से I wouldn't say कि कोई बेहतर है और कोई नहीं बेहतर. There are some subjects and there are some concepts in a subject that are achieved very well and efficiently through teacher-centered teaching approaches, whereas some content in some subjects can be and should be achieved through student-centered instructional strategies. So it really depends what you're teaching, how you're dealing with the situation, what sort of content do you have on hand, what is the expectation of your students, the context of the students. But इनकी जो basic characteristics हैं वो क्या हैं? कि teacher-centered instructional strategies are more organized. They keep the student learning objectives at the core. आपका target सिर्फ होता है कि मैंने ये learning objective को accomplish करना है. Students का role इसमें passive है और आपका focus होता है assessment पे. You're basically teaching for the assessment. Whereas student-centered instructional strategies are more interactive, they are more contextualized, they are more integrative in nature when it comes to learning objectives. You're not only achieving one learning objective through a student-centered teaching approach, you're integrating different learning objectives and making it a collection of likewise learning objectives for the students to accomplish. आप एक student को एक task दे रहे हैं, unit दे रहे हैं पूरा कि इसके ये 5 learning objectives हैं, आपने खुद accomplish करने हैं. उसके लिए आपने एक range of learning activities plan की, range of learning resources दे दिए students को. And now what they are doing is that they basically achieving those on their own, जिसका मतलब है कि वो integrate कर रहे हैं learning objectives को. Maybe they are achieving 2 or more learning objectives at the same time through one activity. They are collaborative. Student learning, student instructional strategies, the student-centered instructional strategies are usually based on the laws of collaboration. Sometimes students have to work in groups, sometimes in pairs, sometimes, even if they are not working with another human or with their peers, then they are interacting and collaborating with different activities. They are engaged in different activities. They are engaged in maybe research. So they're interacting with either the content or their peers or the learning activities and experiences that you have created for them. These instructional strategies engage students in reflection, which later on develops the sense of critical thinking amongst them. When students reflect on what they have done, what did they achieve, how well did they perform, and when teachers create activities for them in such a way that students are engaged in reflective exercises, they are more likely to evaluate their performance. They're more likely to identify where did they lack, how could they improve themselves. So these are the overarching characteristics of different instructional strategies. Now it really depends on you, your situation, the context in which you're operating, कि आपने किस किस्म की instructional strategies को choose करना है. Let's talk about the principles, how to choose a suitable instructional strategy. अब ये बहुत ज़रूरी है कि आप जो choices करें अपनी, those choices should be based on some principles, some pedagogic principles. वो random choices ना हो, इसलिए ना हो कि आज आपके लिए आसान है इंस्ट्रक्शनल स्ट्रैटेजी वो चूज करना जो कि स्टूडेंट सेंटर्ड है, या आज आपके लिए मुश्किल है स्टूडेंट सेंटर्ड टीचिंग स्ट्रैटेजी को चूज करना, तो आपने दूसरी स्ट्रैटेजीज चूज कर ली. देयर शुड बी सम ग्राउंड प्रिंसिपल्स जिनको आपने फॉलो करना है. वन ऑफ विच इज to consider the challenge level of your student learning outcomes. Basically, आपके जो student learning outcomes हैं, they should be realistic, they should be tangible, they should be achievable, and they should offer a right degree of challenge to your students. अब ये आपको पता है कि आपके students का क्या context है, वो कितना challenge level ले सकते हैं, उनके लिए कितना challenge level appropriate होगा. You must analyze your classroom environment. What is the kind of resource network that you have access to? What is your space in terms of physical space that we're talking about? What is the layout of your lecture room? How many students can you accommodate in that lecture hall? And what sort of activities can you perform easily? Can you and should you perform the collaborative exercises with the students that involve them in group discussions or pair discussions? Or would the space not allow you to do that? What are the other learning venues outside the conventional classroom? Can you take the students to the library? Should you take the students to the IT lab? Can you bring technology to your classroom? All of this, you know, your resource analysis is absolutely essential for you. You should also analyze the tasks. What are the behaviors that you want the students to master? You know, you must have a specific behavior expectation in your mind that you want the students to exhibit during their task. What is the subject matter that you will accomplish or you want to accomplish through this task? How will your students process the information? Will they be involved in reasoning? Will they be involved in evaluation of different concepts, in creation of different concepts? So आप अपना task analysis भी करें, and जो task होता है उसको बेहतरीन तरीके से accomplish करने के लिए कौन सी learning strategies हैं जो कि आप use कर सकते हैं. And lastly, you know, all of this should then comply with your personal teaching approach. You must have a personal teaching approach. आप किस किस्म के टीचर हैं अपने आप से पूछें. Sometimes some teachers are very good at lecturing, some teachers are very good at organizing different learning activities. अपनी strengths को analyze करें, identify करें, और आपकी जो successful teaching strategies होती हैं वो होती हैं which sprout from your own interests. Don't try to impress the students. Don't try to do a lot in one go. Your practices should be sustainable. Even if you want to integrate technology in your lectures, it should be only to a certain level where you can sustain the integration of education technology. So this is, you know, these are the principles for choosing the right kind of instructional strategy. कि आपने अपने personal teaching approaches को consider करना है, आपने अपने environment को consider करना है, उसको अच्छे तरीके से explore करें कि आपके पास क्या क्या possibilities हैं within your colleges, आपका content क्या है, उसकी क्या demands हैं, learning outcomes किस किस्म के होंगे, task analysis करें कि आप किस तरह के behavioral और skills oriented experiences students को देना चाहते हैं. What do you expect from them? I'm sure you all must are aware of the Bloom's taxonomy. Try to analyze the learning outcomes in the light of the Bloom's taxonomy and mindfully try to engage students in the higher order thinking skills. Now, let's quickly talk about the characteristics of instructional strategies for effective learning. One characteristic is that it should promote observation. If nothing else, you know, this is the weakest level of engagement, but if nothing else, at least your teaching sessions should promote a sense of observation among students. इसके लिए क्या आप कर सकते हैं? You can create some kind of worksheets for them, some kind of observatory mechanism, कोई reflective journal practice करें अपनी क्लास में, मगर observation की का जो skill है उसको integrate करें अपने lessons में. Experience oriented teaching करें. कोशिश करें कि अपने सब्जेक्ट्स में चाहे आप थ्योरी ही पढ़ा रहे हैं बट एक्सपीरियंस ओरिएंटेड टीचिंग करें. इवन इंग्लिश में भी एक्सपीरियंस ओरिएंटेड, इंग्लिश लैंग्वेज टीचिंग में भी एक्सपीरियंस ओरिएंटेड टीचिंग हो सकती है. देयर आर सो मेनी डिफरेंट वेज, डिफरेंट मेथड्स डिपेंडिंग ऑन द काइंड ऑफ रिसोर्सेज दैट यू हैव, but you can actually practice experience oriented teaching, and that's what you should do. Your teaching should be inquiry based. It should enable students to understand the ethics of research and to explore different concepts. They should be able to practice self-driven research and engage in exploration of different ideas for understanding the concept on their own. Also, your instructional strategies should promote activity. It should engage students in the process of learning. Now, how do you want to engage the students? That's up to you. Do you want to engage them through questioning? Do you want to engage them through experiences, through observation, through critical thinking, reflection, through recreation of concepts? That is entirely up to you. But these are some characteristics which you should mindfully integrate in your ongoing teaching, so that you you mindfully provide such experiences to the students to engage in effective learning. Lastly, I'm going to talk about this learning pyramid. Please keep in mind that when you lecture, and no matter how great your lecture is, students only retain 10% of it. When you ask them to read something and just read something, not do anything after the reading, they are likely to retain very little, again between 10 to 15%. When you use audio visual resources, it's a little better, because you're using two senses of students, and but still the retention is very less. The maximum retention is when students engage in peer tutoring, when they engage in practice oriented tasks, such as today I involved you in two different activities in which you commented on something, this, and based on which we had a discussion, which was, yes, teacher oriented, teacher driven. But then again, you had a chance to contribute your ideas and your thoughts. Always remember that mindfully, when you plan your lessons and before you go into the lecture halls to implement those lessons, please take a look at the kind of experiences that you're providing to the students. Try to integrate the peer tutoring aspect. Try to integrate the hands-on experiences for the students so that they maximize the learning. This brings me to the end of this session, and now I would like to open the floor for a discussion. If there is anything that anyone wants to say, please raise your hand. Please raise self-regulated learning. It's a kind of self-regulated learning when you just provide the learning objectives and the learning and the list of learning experiences to the students. They accomplish those learning objectives on their own by self-evaluating and by engaging in self-driven practices. Such kind of teaching and learning is called self-regulated learning for the students. Yes, I know mics are muted. It's okay. You can post a comment here. You can even ask a question, just like Dr. Abdul Salim did. I would really appreciate if you guys use the meeting chat option to post your comment or any question. So thank you so much. I believe there aren't any questions. Thank you for all the appreciation that you're sharing with me. Thank you so much. I'm going to share this presentation, the slides with the Punjab Higher Education Commission. Yes, hands-on practice is also okay. Just a second, it's going so fast.
Assalamu alaikum, ma'am.
Walaikum assalam. Okay,
जी,
finally
अस्सलाम वालेकुम, मैम.
mics
हाँ
have
जी,
been
मैम,
unmuted. Now
unmute.
please raise your hand before you make
हाँ
a
जी.
comment.
जी मैम, आपकी जो चीज़ें हैं वो सारी बड़ी अलाइन और बड़ी अच्छी, डेफिनेटली हम लोग इससे सीख रहे हैं चीज़ों से. अच्छा, कुछ चीज़ें कन्फ्यूजिंग में ये है कि अभी आपने बताया सेल्फ रेगुलेटेड का वर्ड यूज़ किया ना, कि कुछ चीज़ें होती हैं सेल्फ प्रैक्टिस होती है. टीचर कहता है जी आप जो है सेल्फ प्रैक्टिस करें, इसको पढ़ें, खुद ही टेस्ट देख लें, सवाल हल कर लें. तो ये जो टीचर, एक तो आपने बताया 15-20 लोग वो तो माइक्रो टीचिंग में आए थे, तो ये कौन सी टीचिंग टाइप कहलाएगी? माइक्रो टीचिंग होगी, मैक्रो होगी, या इसे इफेक्टिव टीचिंग कहेंगे?
Dr. Tanveer, please अपना mic mute करें. There's a lot of distortion from your end. जी, माइक्रो टीचिंग आप क्या पूछ रहे हैं मुझसे? आई एम सॉरी.
मैम, मैं पूछ रहा था कि ये आमतौर पे स्टूडेंट को कह देते हैं ना टीचर के बेटा ये आपने जाके खुद ही पढ़ना है, खुद ही फिर देखना है, अपना टेस्ट का चेक कर लेना है, तो अगर पॉइंट होगा मुझे पूछ लेना है. तो इसको हम इफेक्टिव टीचिंग कह सकते हैं ये, या ये जैसे आपने 10-12 लोग हो तो उसे माइक्रो टीचिंग कह देते हैं ना, तो ये किसकी टाइप है? इफेक्टिव है या माइक्रो है या मैक्रो है?
आपने इंटीग्रेट करना है विद सेल्फ रिव्यू चेकलिस्ट. You must provide a list of rubrics to the students. You must provide what is good practice in your opinion. I mean, आपकी क्या expectations हैं, आप किस चीज़ को excellent कह रहे हैं, किस चीज़ को good practice कह रहे हैं, और किस किस्म के काम को आप कह रहे हैं it needs improvement. These terminologies are very subjective. Sometimes teachers have a certain set of expectations in their mind which they do not convey very well to the students, and students in their own capacity they think that हमने बहुत अच्छा काम किया है, क्योंकि वो एक पेज पे नहीं होते. उनकी जो उनकी टीचर की एक्सपेक्टेशंस उनको पता ही नहीं होती, तो फिर वो अनफेयर हो जाता है स्टूडेंट्स के साथ थोड़ा सा, क्योंकि आप जब फिर उनको मार्क करते हैं तो आप उनको फेल कर देते हैं. अपनी तरफ से तो बच्चों ने बहुत अच्छा काम किया हुआ होता है, तो आपने उनको एग्जैक्टली बताना है कि आपके लिए वो जो अच्छा काम है उसका क्या मतलब है. और जब आप उनको कह रहे हैं कि बेटे आप ये इसको खुद चेक कर लें अपने काम को, तो कोई रूब्रिक्स होने चाहिए, कोई सक्सेस क्राइटेरिया होना चाहिए, कोई डेफिनेशन होनी चाहिए इस बात की कि सक्सेस का मतलब क्या है.
ठीक है मैम, थैंक यू मैम. अच्छा, 2 पॉइंट्स मैम और हैं. एक तो ये है कि आपने शुरू में आपने ही बल्कि ये पूछा था क्वेश्चन कि मोस्ट इफेक्टिव टीचिंग जो है वो इफेक्टिव लर्निंग की शक्ल में आती है या ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन है? ये इफेक्टिव टीचिंग होती है.
इफेक्टिव टीचिंग जो है वो टीचिंग होती है जिसके बाद स्टूडेंट लर्निंग आउटकम्स मैक्सिमाइज हो सकें. अब वो अगर सिर्फ लेक्चर से हो रही है तो लेक्चर मेथड कैन बी एन इफेक्टिव टीचिंग मेथड. इट रियली डिपेंड्स व्हाट यू आर टीचिंग, आपके स्टूडेंट्स का क्या कॉन्टेक्स्ट है, आपके करिकुलम की एक्सपेक्टेशंस क्या हैं, रिक्वायरमेंट्स क्या हैं. सो इफेक्टिव टीचिंग का मतलब ये नहीं है कि आपने बहुत सारी टीचिंग स्ट्रेटजीज को आपने अपने लेक्चर में इंटीग्रेट किया हुआ है जिनका आपस में कोई ताल्लुक नहीं है, जो कि स्टूडेंट्स को कोई एक्सपीरियंसेस नहीं दे रहे या स्टूडेंट्स को कोई स्किल्स नहीं सिखा रहे. ये इफेक्टिव टीचिंग नहीं है. Fancy teaching is not effective teaching. Effective teaching is only something that enables you to accomplish your teaching objectives.
ओके डियर पार्टिसिपेंट्स, अगर किसी पार्टिसिपेंट का और कोई सवाल है तो काइंडली हैंड रेज करें और अपना माइक अनम्यूट करें और बोलें. समा बशीर कैनी साहब.
अस्सलाम वालेकुम मैडम. मैडम ये हैंड्स ऑन प्रैक्टिस जो है ये इफेक्टिव लर्निंग में शामिल होगी?
बिल्कुल होगी. अभी हमने वो जो लर्निंग पिरामिड की बात की है, स्टूडेंट्स मैक्सिमाइज करते हैं अपने लर्निंग एक्सपीरियंसेस को जिस वक्त वो खुद से एंगेज्ड होते हैं कुछ करने में. When they are involved in their learning, when they are doing something on their own, that's the highest level of retention of learning ideas. So definitely hands-on learning जो है वो included होगी effective teaching and learning में.
थैंक यू मैडम। एक और जो 90% आपने कहा है कि पैरामिड में जो उनकी लर्निंग है, तो वो अदर कौन से होंगे वो अदर
इसको
टीचिंग?
कहते हैं पीयर ट्यूटरिंग। ये बहुत एक कॉमन स्ट्रेटजी है जिसके अंदर आप अपनी क्लास को हाफ एंड हाफ डिवाइड कर देते हैं। ग्रुप ए plans the teaching intervention for group B, and the group B plans the teaching intervention for group A, and they also plan each other's assessments. Teacher becomes a partner with both the groups, and आप अपने कुछ learning objectives को दोनों groups में divide कर देते हैं। इस तरह की strategy को कहते हैं peer tutoring, और ये बहुत effective है actually.
थैंक यू मैडम।
ओके पार्टिसिपेंट्स, अगर किसी और पार्टिसिपेंट का कोई सवाल है तो वो अपना हैंड रेज करें, अपने आप को अनम्यूट करें और सवाल पूछें। इसके अलावा हमारा चैट बॉक्स है माइक्रोसॉफ्ट टीम का, आप वहाँ इसको भी यूज कर सकते हैं।
जी, अस्सलाम वालेकुम मैम।
वालेकुम सलाम।
आई एम खालिद इकबाल फ्रॉम रावलपिंडी। So my question is that the academic calendar, or as we plan our studies, there is a long break in the name of summer break, then there is winter break, there is spring break. And I think that this schedule that was planned pre-partition. So do you think that we need some changes in this academic calendar for effective learning or teaching, or what we want to do in future?
Sir, effective learning has nothing to do with your academic calendar. It's an intervention. An intervention that you plan for the students. When you want to teach the students, when you plan your lectures for the students, that is what should, that is what should project effective learning. That is it. It has nothing to do with your academic calendar कि जून में आपका कॉलेज जो है वो समर ब्रेक के लिए बंद हो रहा है. That happens everywhere in the world. I mean छुट्टियां तो मिलती ही हैं ना स्टूडेंट्स को, लेकिन जो ongoing intervention है, डे टू डे बेसिस पे आप स्टूडेंट्स को क्या एक्सपीरियंसेस दे रहे हैं, we are talking about those experiences. हाँ, you should plan some projects for those long breaks if you can, and if your institution allows you to do that, then that's the best way to handle those long breaks. Utilize that time for integrative projects, for thematic projects, and if not, then that is also okay.
होता ये है ना कि जो इंटरमीडिएट के स्टूडेंट्स होते हैं वो मार्च अप्रैल में फ्री हो जाते हैं. They have prep leaves, and then in April, May they take their exams. Then there is 3 months summer break. Then there are the result declaration, and after that there is a result process for the next classes, next levels. So almost, I think that 5 to 6 months they are gone wasted. So I am talking in that context that I think that we should do something in this respect as well.
Well, this can be, this can be considered. आप इसको जो ये जो long breaks हैं, again I would say कि वो free हो जाते हैं, ठीक है, but you can involve them in some self-driven activities, some thematic projects that provide them different experiences that enriches their learning abilities. But right now, effective teaching strategies की जब हम बात कर रहे हैं, तो हम बात कर रहे हैं basically ongoing teaching intervention की. Right, so that's what we were talking about. So I think, thank you so much. I'm going to close the session now. Thank you for your comments and your appreciation. I'm going to share this presentation with Mr. Shahid Imran, and he can later share it with you all. I wish you a good day full of learning. Thank you so much, Punjab Higher Education Commission, for involving me in this training session. So Shahid Saab, I'm going to take an exit now.
Thank you very much, Professor Dr. Mehwish Raza, for your time and for conducting such a wonderful session. Definitely this session would have benefited our participants a lot. Thank you, ma'am. And
thank you.
Do share with me the presentation so that I may able to share them.
Sure, I will. Thank you.
Participants, now you have your lunch and the prayer break, and inshallah Aziz, the next session will resume at 2:30. positively in the afternoon. So thank you very much for being the part of this session. And as soon as I receive a presentation from the Varti resource persons, I will share it with you.